Chapter 2636. Ji Xinyu also added something to these wild donkeys, but she didn't let them eat it, nor did she put it on their fur, but on their legs. This poison was extremely strong. A single drop was enough to kill an elephant in an instant. Ji Xinyu wrapped them in wax pills, and then planted them in the flesh of the wild donkey's hind legs. Wild donkeys were good at running, and when they ran, their leg muscles would exert force, and their blood would flow faster, which would slowly corrode the wax pills in their flesh. Once the wax pills broke, the poison would come out, and the poison would naturally take effect. Ji Xinyu's wax pills were very delicate, and could stay in the wild donkeys' bodies for 3 hours without breaking, so these wild donkeys would be fine for a short period of time. Their lively jumping was perfect for becoming the evil flood dragon's food. If there were no accidents, the poison would take effect after the evil flood dragon ate the wild donkeys. Ji Xinyu had already figured out the evil flood dragon's habits, so she was very confident now. Just as she expected, 2 hours later, the waves in the coiling dragon stream surged, and a huge monster came out of the sky, bringing with it wind and rain. When it came out of the water, it was only the size of a Tyrannosaurus rex, but when it flew into the air, it grew as the wind blew, and instantly covered the sky like a dark green cloud. Its eyes were like millstones, its body like a mountain, and every scale on its body was the size of a pot lid, emitting a cold green light. It raised its head and roared, causing all the mountains around it to tremble. Ji Xinyu, who was hiding in the dark, also felt her heart tremble. This flood dragon was different from the one described in the documents, and it was several times bigger. Could it have evolved? When such a ferocious creature appeared, it would bring with it an overwhelming pressure. It didn't need to do anything, and those wild donkeys that were lying and eating grass directly fell to the ground, trembling in fear, but didn't dare to move. The flood dragon circled down, and with a swipe of its sharp claws, it could tear off an entire donkey's skin, and then swallow it whole. This scene was a little bloody, and even Ji Xinyu felt her scalp tighten when she saw it. She held her saber and waited behind the clouds, waiting for the moment the evil flood dragon's poison would take effect. With so many poison pills, even if they couldn't kill it, they should be able to poison it to death, right? In the eyes of the evil Jiao dragon, the donkeys were just a few desserts. In the blink of an eye, they were all eaten. The grass was covered in blood, and the donkey skins were scattered all over the ground. Ji Xinyu silently calculated the time, calculating that the wax skin of the poison pill should have melted by now, and the poison should have entered the evil flood dragon's stomach. She waited for a moment, then quietly parted the clouds around her, and looked down. Then he was stunned. The evil flood dragon was nowhere to be found. Could it be that after eating, it fell into the water? Her water escape technique wasn't good enough. If they were to fight in the water, she would most likely be no match for him. She waited for a while, but there was still no movement from the coiling dragon stream. At this time, it should have been poisoned, and the poison was extremely strong, so it should be violently rolling and struggling. Then why was the water surface as calm as a mirror? Ji Xinyu couldn't figure it out, so she simply stretched out her hand, parting all the clouds around her. Just as she was about to rush down to take a look, she suddenly seemed to have sensed something, and her body rolled in the clouds like lightning. A green light with a fishy smell flew past her body, directly shattering the rolling clouds around her. The aftermath of the green light cut a mountain peak not far away, cutting off half of the mountain peak. Chapter 2637. A piece of Ji Xinyu's clothes was cut off by the green light, but luckily she was not injured. She jumped up and saw that the missing flood dragon appeared above her. Its body had shrunk by several sizes, but its terrifying aura was several times stronger. At this moment, it was staring at her with a pair of blood-red eyes, and the corner of its ugly mouth was half raised, like a proud and mocking smile. It was not poisoned. Ji Xinyu's heart skipped a beat. She could not believe it. She clearly saw the flood dragon swallow all the donkey meat. Moreover, in order to prevent the flood dragon from tearing the donkey's skin, she planted the wax pills very deep, and even planted them on the donkey's thigh where the meat was the most abundant, so it was impossible for them to be torn out. Even if one or two pills were torn out, it was impossible for all of them to be torn out, right? As if to answer her doubts, the evil flood dragon opened its mouth wide, and more than a dozen bright red finger-sized objects shot towards Ji Xinyu. These were the poison pills she had planted on the donkey's body. 18 pills, not a single one missing. This flood dragon was really smart. It actually found out in advance and removed the pills. Those dozen pills came at her fiercely. Ji Xinyu did not dare to use her knife to cut them, in case she cut the wax, and the poison inside sprayed all over her body. She dodged to the side and dodged. The 18 pills shot down to the cliff below, and all of them were embedded in the rocks. After a few popping sounds, the cliff quickly turned black and then shattered. The flood dragon looked down, then suddenly raised its head and let out a long roar, and pounced towards Ji Xinyu with the wind and rain. It was very obvious that it was angry. This evil Jiao dragon was really cunning. At this time, Ji Xinyu could only fight. Fortunately, she had done enough homework beforehand and knew the flood dragon's moves. She had already planned a way to deal with it in advance, so she was not too flustered when fighting with this flood dragon. In order to make it easier for her to hide on the clouds, she wore a white robe and held a simple and majestic golden machete in her hand. The machete swayed slightly, and a several zhongtal blade light flew out, slashing towards the flood dragon like a storm. The man and the flood dragon began fighting in midair. This flood dragon was of the water attribute. Even if it was fighting in the air, its every move would cause waves to fill the sky. Wherever it went, it would turn into a vast swamp. If Ji Xinyu was not careful, she would be in danger of being swallowed by the swamp. Both of them used their own tricks and fought fiercely in the air. The entire immortal cloud mountain was enveloped in lightning and thunder. The rumbling sounds were like the collapse of the heavens and the earth, causing the entire ground to tremble. The clouds flew around like crazy, and the trees and boulders on the mountain peak were also blown away by the fierce wind from the fight. They flew all over the sky, and the momentum was astonishing. Such a huge commotion naturally alarmed the soldiers, who had been wandering around the periphery of the immortal cloud mountain. Because they were afraid of being ambushed by the evil flood dragon, the place where these soldiers and generals were patrolling was a full 30 miles away from the immortal cloud mountain. From such a great distance, they could not see clearly what was happening in the immortal cloud mountain. No matter how hard they tried, they could only faintly see the clouds and mist in the distant sky surging crazily, as if a storm was coming. But they could still clearly hear the sounds from the fight between the man and the flood dragon, especially the flood dragon's roar. It was so loud that even the deaf could hear it. Even from such a great distance, it still caused them to see stars. Chapter 2638. Especially that flood dragon's roar. It was simply deafening. Even though they were so far away, it still shook them until they saw stars. Even the buildings not far away were shaken by the roar. There were many people who came to Immortal Cloud Mountain to subdue the flood dragon. But this was the first time someone fought with the flood dragon and caused such a big commotion. Due to the great disparity in strength between the enemy and themselves, most of the people who went to Immortal Cloud Mountain to subdue the flood dragon were either killed and fled, or became food for the flood dragon. Even if they could really fight with the flood dragon, they could at most last for a quarter of an hour. After a quarter of an hour, Immortal Cloud Mountain would return to its frightening calm. But this time, the fierce fighting sound had already lasted for more than 4 hours, and there was still no sign of it weakening. Being so far away, everyone's ears were muddled, and the soles of their feet were numb. They were simply unable to run in to check. No one dared to go in to check. Everyone could only stay in place and watch the wind and clouds roll in the sky, curiosity rising in their hearts. Who was the person fighting with the flood dragon? To be able to hold on for so long, one must know that when the sect master of Purple Cloud Sect came, even with his great ability, he could only hold on for 2 hours. When he came out, he was covered in injuries. If he did not know the escape technique, he would have lost his life inside. Now the fight inside had lasted for so long. While the soldiers sent people to deliver the news to South Sky Emperor, they were also guessing. One person suddenly had an epiphany. Do you guys think it could be that Eastern Sky Clan's 8th prince? I heard that when he came back, he had already cultivated to high immortal. He should be the #1 person in the world. Perhaps only he has this ability. It's possible. After all, he is our Southern Sky Clan's son-in-law. Although he is unmarried, he silently ran away from the marriage for so long, causing our princess to become the laughingstock of the world. Perhaps he felt apologetic and heard that the flood dragon appeared here. So he specially came to subdue it to give our Southern Sky Clan an explanation. Perhaps so. However, our people didn't see how he got in. So many people, yet no one noticed. I heard that this 8th Prince Rongyu not only has high martial arts, he is also the #1 handsome man in the world. As soon as he came back, he caused a sensation in the Eastern Sky Clan. Wherever he went, those women would express their goodwill one after another, throwing flower and fruit handkerchiefs. It is said that wherever he went there would be a sensation. By the way, you said that he is so outstanding now, and is already the #1 person in the Fanning continent. Would someone like him still fancy our country's 3rd princess? This is hard to say. After all, our princess doesn't have a good reputation. Nonsense. Isn't it all because of him that our princess has a bad reputation? Actually, our princess isn't that bad either. His voice trailed off as he spoke the last sentence. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The ranks of these people were not high, and all they knew about Princess Ji Xinyue were rumors. None of them had actually seen her in person. It could also be said that on this continent, there were not many people who had actually seen Princess Ji Xinyue. She was sent to the Purple Cloud sect when she was still a child, and the Purple Cloud sect's rules were notoriously strict. Before cultivating to a certain level, they were not allowed to leave the sect. Although the Purple Cloud sect was a famous sect, it did not have many disciples, only about 20. Any one of them would be an absolute expert on the Fanning continent. Chapter 2639. And these people basically stood aloof from worldly affairs. They would occasionally go down the mountain, and their mouths would be tighter than a clam's shell. It was impossible to dig out any gossip about Princess Ji Xinyue from their mouths. Later on, Princess Ji Xinyue returned from her studies, but every time she came and went in a hurry, and most of the time she wore a veil. After so many years, the number of people who could truly see Princess Ji Xinyue's true appearance could be counted on one's fingers. So in the rumors about this princess on this continent, there were even some who said that she was incomparably ugly, completely different from her 2 sisters. Everyone here was discussing spiritedly, and naturally took out Ji Xinyue's shortcomings, and repeated them one by one. Even if His Highness the 8th Prince marries our 3rd princess out of righteousness, I'm afraid she can only be his official consort in name. In the future, he will definitely take in beautiful concubines. Sigh, our 3rd princess's fate is worrying. Maybe His Highness the 8th Prince will not even be willing to marry her after seeing her like this, and will directly break off the engagement. He probably won't break off the engagement. After all, he has delayed our 3rd princess for so many years. If he breaks off the engagement now, it will be too unreasonable. I'm afraid His Majesty will directly fall out with the East Sky Emperor. Sigh. Who knows about the affairs of these important people? But I feel that His Highness the 8th Prince won't be so heartless, right? This is hard to say. I heard that His Highness the 8th Prince was originally not satisfied with this marriage, so he simply walked away. It was the East Sky Emperor who took his birth characters and used a special method to arrange this marriage on his behalf. This marriage was originally not something he wanted to arrange, and was not arranged by him personally. If he insists on breaking off the engagement, we can't say that he is heartless. These people were discussing heatedly when suddenly, there was a slight breeze in the air, and a long sigh seemed to brush past their ears. Everyone was shocked, and they all raised their weapons and shouted, "Who?" However, the breeze was cold, and the sun was setting. Where was the person? The place they were at was an open space, without any cover or obstruction. It belonged to the type where one could see several miles away. Even if a mouse scurried past here, they would be able to see and distinguish its gender. But now, they clearly heard that sigh in their ears, but they could not see the person. Haunted. Everyone looked at each other. and everyone felt the hair on their backs stand up. Rong Yuetian waved his fan as he casually stood on top of a big tree. To be honest, he was a little depressed. Ugly, not good at needlework, likes to play with knives and sticks, rude and uncultured, and has an inferiority complex, unwilling to meet people. So this was the label that his fiancée had attached to her body. Her inferiority complex was probably caused by him. After all, she had lived with rumors for so long. No matter how strong a girl was, she would feel inferior because of these rumors. But he was ugly, not good at needlework, liked to play with knives and sticks, and was rude and uncultured. These shouldn't be his reasons, right? Of course, he didn't care if the woman knew how to sew. Even if his future wife didn't know how to sew, he wouldn't mind. Being fond of wielding swords and sticks was even less of a problem. Dizun's women were also fond of wielding swords and sticks. Didn't they still captivate a lot of people? Even the 10,000-year-old ice cube melted, willingly turning into something soft. Every time he saw the Dizun couple showing off their affection, he felt like he was being abused. What did Ning Xuema say about this situation? Spread a handful of dog food and violently abuse the single dogs? Therefore, it was not a problem for a woman to dislike needlework and enjoy wielding swords and sticks. He even liked it. However, being rude and uncultured, this was really not his cup of tea. Chapter 2640. Whether it was in the Tianxi continent or the Fanning continent, he Rongyu Tianlan was the most cultured, most elegant, and most elegant handsome man. He was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He could recite poems and compose essays as soon as he opened his mouth. He was truly a standard cultured person. He was a great scholar, and no one was an amateur. How could his wife be a rude and uncultured person? Therefore, he had to withdraw from this engagement. He sighed softly and tapped the space between his eyebrows with the fan. If his fiancée was outstanding in all kinds of ways, it would be fine. He wouldn't feel guilty if he withdrew from the engagement. If she was outstanding, even if he withdrew from the engagement, she could quickly find a good marriage partner. But she was like this, she was already an old lady because of him. If he withdrew from the engagement, he was afraid that the rumors would be even more widespread. It would be difficult for her to find a good marriage partner. No good family would want to marry her, right? He couldn't bear this result. Rongyu Tianlan waved the fan and touched his little conscience to reflect there. He thought there for a moment, and his heart suddenly moved. 9 out of 10 men were ugly. The reason why his fiancée couldn't get married easily was most likely because of her ugly appearance. However, he was good at a kind of face-changing technique. He could use a kind of surgery and magic to turn something rotten into something magical. Even if she was ugly, he could use this method to change her into a stunning beauty. Then after he withdrew from the engagement, he would perform a cosmetic surgery for her. As long as she was beautiful and had the status of a princess, she wouldn't have to worry about not being able to get married in the future. Yes, this was the idea. As for the South Heaven Arch, he was indeed sorry. But there was no other way. He always had a hazy woman in his heart. Every time he thought of her, his heart would hurt. The ancestor said that the red Luan star was moving, so he should find that woman and not others. Not to mention that this third princess had so many shortcomings. Even if she was a perfect and peerless beauty, this engagement still had to be withdrawn. He would also give an explanation to the South Heaven Arch. He shaded his eyes with his hand and looked at the billowing smoke in the distance. Others might not be able to see it clearly, but he could see it very clearly. He saw a white figure moving like lightning, fighting fiercely with the incomparably huge evil flood dragon. Both the man and the dragon were extremely fast. If he hadn't cultivated to this level, and his eyesight could be described as abnormal, he probably wouldn't have been able to see the changes in their moves. He looked at it for a moment and raised his eyebrows in surprise. He himself was an absolute expert, so he could naturally see the strength of both sides while watching the battle. That evil Jiao dragon was as abnormal as the rumors said. It was hard to imagine that a flood dragon could cultivate to such a level. Its abnormal level was not something that the experts of this world could subdue. It was no wonder that so many experts had returned in defeat. Even if it was him, If it was 3,000 years ago, he would have no chance of winning against this evil Jiao dragon. It would be good if he could last for 4 hours. But now, he actually saw that the white-robed man and the evil flood dragon were evenly matched. After fighting for so long, the white-robed man still did not show any signs of defeat. He was extremely valiant. He didn't expect there to be such an expert on the Sanskrit continent. Moreover, it was a woman. Interesting. Although the woman used a camouflage technique to change into a man's body, this camouflage technique could only block the eyes of people who were weaker than her. But it couldn't block the eyes of people like Rongyue Tianlan, who was extremely powerful. So he could see through her disguise at a glance and see her original body. Chapter 2641. Because the distance was too far, Rongyue Ishanlin could only see her figure clearly. He couldn't see her delicate appearance for a while. He could only see that the woman's figure seemed to be very good. When she fought, it was actually very pleasing to the eye. Rongyue Ishanlin liked to look at beautiful women. In his own words, he was romantic but not vulgar. He had always liked to appreciate all kinds of beautiful women. But that was all. It was like admiring a beautiful painting or a wonderful poem. He also had a tender heart for the fairer sex. Just like if a beautiful jade fell into the swamp, he would pick it up and wipe it clean with heartache. When a beauty was in trouble, he also liked to help. Now, he was watching the battle between the beauty and the dragon in the distant sky. Based on his experience, the beauty's fighting ability was slightly weaker than the dragon's. It would be fine if the battle lasted for 4 hours. But after 4 hours, the beauty's physical strength was limited after all, and he was afraid that she would be defeated. If she was defeated in such a situation, he was afraid that she wouldn't get anything good out of it. The evil dragon had been hit by several of her big moves. Although it didn't cause fatal damage, it had taken off several of its scales and scratched several parts of its body. It was probably the first time in its life that the evil dragon had suffered such a big loss. It was so angry that even its scales were standing up. Once the girl was defeated, the evil dragon would definitely chew her to pieces. He leaped up and flew toward the battlefield. His speed was naturally very fast. A distance of dozens of miles was just a blink of an eye for him. The circle of the battle between the woman and the evil dragon was very large. The murderous aura formed when the two fought turned everything within a radius of 10 miles into powder. The murderous aura was so strong that ordinary immortals couldn't get close at all. If they did, they would either die or be injured. However, Rongyue Ishanlin was very close. He was so close that he could almost touch the evil dragon's tail. The evil dragon and the woman naturally noticed him, the intruder. This evil dragon already had the intelligence of a human, and it was even smarter than most people. When it saw Rongyue Ishanlin's relaxed expression, it knew that the other party was a strong opponent. Its eyes were wide open, and its whole body was on guard. The woman glanced at him in the midst of the battle. She seemed to be shocked by his kung fu. However, she only glanced at him once. The people who were in the middle of an intense battle did not have the extra energy to pay attention to their surroundings. Her sixth sense told her that this person wasn't an enemy. He was most likely here to kill the flood dragon. After all, there were too many people who wanted to kill the flood dragon, and this man should be one of them. Because the flood dragon was too famous and too dangerous, the capable people of this continent had already listed it as their #1 enemy. Of course, if anyone could kill it, they would immediately become famous. Even a nobody was no exception. Because of this, although the people who came to find trouble with the evil flood dragon were defeated wave after wave, they still came one after another. Obviously, Ji Xinyue also thought that Rongyue Tianlan was such a person. So after glancing at him, she stopped looking at him and focused on fighting the evil flood dragon. Rongyue Tianlan stood at the side leisurely, allowing the man and the beast to fight until the sky turned dark, but she didn't have any intention of stepping forward to help. According to the rules of World of Martial Arts, when one person was farming a boss, the other person was not allowed to steal the boss before the victor was decided, unless they were invited by the first person. Otherwise, they would be despised by the entire Fanning continent. Chapter 2642. After all, Rongyue Tianlan was born and raised on this continent, so he understood these rules very well. Therefore, he patiently stood outside the circle as a bystander. He had no interest in snatching the kill, nor did he expect to become famous by killing the flood dragon. These were all fleeting clouds to him. He just couldn't bear to see a beauty become food. He was prepared to extend his small hand to help this girl escape when the time came. As he got closer, he finally saw the girl's appearance clearly, and his heart skipped a beat. This girl was even more beautiful than he had imagined. Her figure was also very good, belonging to the type of femme fatale. Such a girl should have been raised in a boudoir, embroidered, recited poems, and had a group of servants waiting on her. A few drops of tears could attract countless heroes, and with this good appearance, she could find a good husband, be rich and leisurely, and be pampered for the rest of her life. She could get everything she wanted with her face, but she had to rely on skills and strength. And her strength was so strong, so high. Rongyue Tianlan looked at Ji Xinyue's moves, and a rare look of admiration appeared in his eyes. This girl was an anomaly. He didn't expect to meet such a special girl on this trip back. It was quite interesting. He paid attention to her moves again, and his heart skipped a beat. This girl's kung fu was somewhat similar to the Xian sect's kung fu, but it wasn't completely. There seemed to be some kung fu that he had never seen before, but felt inexplicably familiar. Rongyue Tianlan knew better than anyone how difficult it was to cultivate kung fu. It required one to work hard and be able to endure hardships. This girl clearly looked delicate, but he didn't expect her to be so good at fighting and to be able to cultivate such profound kung fu. Rongyue Tianlan had always been more respectful towards people who were serious and hardworking, and his expression gradually became serious. He looked at Ji Xinyue's clothes. She was wearing very ordinary, an ordinary white shirt, ordinary boots, and even the hairpin that tied her hair looked like an ordinary white jade hairpin. There was nothing valuable on her body. She didn't seem to come from a good background, probably from an ordinary family. Men's clothing, profound kung fu, and ordinary clothes. It was easy for people to guess her background and purpose for coming here. She probably wanted to use killing the flood dragon to become famous and gain the relevant reputation and status. She was a girl who wanted to rely on her real ability to make a living. Rongyue Tianlan's eyes flashed with appreciation. Perhaps he should help her. He couldn't help her out in the open. Otherwise, the girl would think that he was here to steal her kill. He simply sat down on a cloud and waved his fan as he watched the battle in high spirits. His fingers and his sleeves curled slightly, as if he was making some kind of spell. In the battle just now, Ji Xinyue was a girl after all. After such a long and intense battle, she gradually lost her strength and fell into a disadvantage. The evil Jiao dragon, on the other hand, became more and more courageous as it fought. It spat out clouds and fog, bit and tore with its claws. Its 18 types of martial arts became more and more proficient, and its moves became more and more ruthless. If this continued, Ji Xinyue would definitely lose in less than an hour. However, ever since Rongyue Tianlan came, the evil dragon suddenly realized that it was easy to deviate when it made a move. It wanted to shoot dozens of ice arrows, but as soon as it opened its mouth, its throat itched and it couldn't help but sneeze. More than 10 ice arrows shot out from its nostrils. Because they were not aimed at their targets, these ice arrows shot towards the ground beneath their feet. They did knock down a mountain peak, but Ji Xinyue was unharmed. Chapter 2643. What made it even more furious was that its nasal cavity was rather delicate, and the ice arrow should not have gone there at all. With this deviation, not only did it not hurt its opponent, it even cut its own nasal cavity a few times. It was burning with pain. Another example was when Ji Xinyue attacked aggressively. It raised its claws, wanting to build an ice wall in front of it. Unexpectedly, just as it raised its claws, it felt a sudden pain under its armpit, and its claws shook. The ice wall that was supposed to be built in front of it flew up into the sky, and then fell straight down like a large ice blade, smashing into its own back. When it first built the ice wall, it was afraid that it was not thick enough, but now it felt that it was too heavy, and it almost threw up from the impact. There were countless examples like this. In a fight, a slight mistake could lead to a huge difference. Its consecutive mistakes naturally gave Ji Xinyu an opportunity, and she ruthlessly slashed the evil Jiao dragon countless times. A few of the blades still hit its vital parts. If it wasn't for its tough skin that could withstand all the damage from the divine weapons, those few blades would have taken its life. Even so, its whole body was in pain from the slashes, and it became irritable when it was in pain. And now it was almost jumping with rage. Its roar almost pierced through the clouds and shook the whole earth. It was not stupid, and by now it already knew who was causing trouble in the dark. It originally did not want to pay attention, mainly because it did not want to drag another opponent into the battle, which would be very disadvantageous for it. However, that person's influence on it could not be underestimated, and as long as it had the slightest advantage, it would immediately be plotted against and suffer countless losses in silence. Ji Xinyu naturally also noticed the abnormality and quickly glanced at Rongyue Tianlan. Rongyue Tianlan had been sitting there quietly, and his expression was like a peach forest, very leisurely and carefree. The fan in his hand swayed slightly, and the wind blew a few strands of his hair, making him look even more carefree and unruly. His appearance was a rare beauty, as clear as an ink painting of a landscape. He sat there, with his black hair, blue clothes, and white clouds, making people's eyes light up at first sight. This man was a femme fatale. Moreover, he was the kind of elegant, black-bellied noble young master. This kind of man could easily move the hearts of young girls. Even if he didn't speak, he could probably arouse the hearts of countless young girls. He held a folding fan and looked at the battlefield. His excessively handsome face had an inexplicably focused expression, especially his eyes. They seemed to contain the winding mountains and rivers. The waves were vast and mighty, and when they curved slightly, there seemed to be waves of light floating. At this moment, this pair of eyes fell on Ji Xinyu. Ji Xinyu glanced at him, and their eyes met. He actually smiled at her, his smile like a beautiful spring day, as if there were heavenly flowers falling with his smile. Ji Xinyu calmly averted her gaze. This was clearly a handsome man who could almost be called a disaster. But when Ji Xinyu saw him, she felt an inexplicable irritation. She didn't want to take another look at it. Rongyue Tianlan raised her hand to touch her nose and coughed lightly. There was no woman in this world who would not be stunned when they saw him. Even Ning Xuema, who already had a great god in her heart, looked at him a few more times when she first saw him. However, this young girl in front of him did not seem to take his graceful bearing seriously at all, and looked at him as if she was looking at a lump of cloud. Why was his presence so weak now? Or was there something wrong with him that caused his charm to drop? Chapter 2644. Why was his presence so weak now? Or was there something wrong with him that made his charm drop? He casually took out a small mirror from somewhere and looked at himself. There was nothing wrong with him. He was still handsome and elegant enough to be drawn by a divine brush. Or was it that this little girl's eyesight was not good enough and did not see his gorgeous face? Then he moved closer. He did not move, but the cloud beneath him squeezed closer to the battle circle. He accidentally pushed his head too far and almost bumped into the evil flood dragon. The evil dragon was on guard against him and was shocked when it suddenly saw him so close. It subconsciously slapped him with its tail. Its original intention was to slap him further away from the battle, but it did not expect to not only fail to force this strange spectator to retreat, but also hit the small mirror in his hand with its tail. The small mirror flew out and turned into powder in the air. Not even a shard of glass was left behind. It had poked a hornet's nest this time. The man who was watching the battle leisurely looked, as if his beloved treasure had been smashed. He glared at it and said, "The city gate is on fire, and I am just an innocent bystander. Stupid loach, give me back my yin-yang mirror." He stretched out his arm, and a bright sword appeared in his hand. The tip of the sword was pointed at the evil dragon's nose. The evil dragon was speechless. Ji Xinyu was speechless. Rongyue Tianlan smiled at Ji Xinyu and said, "Brother, it's not that I want to join the battle, but this loach has gone too far." It actually attacked an innocent passerby like me. Let me take my revenge first. I will return this monster to you later. Rongyue Tianlan had always been a considerate person. Since the other party had transformed into a man, he did not have to expose her identity as a woman, so he addressed Ji Xinyu as brother. Ji Xinyu was a straightforward person. In the fierce battle with the evil dragon, she actually retreated in his direction and replied with one word. Okay. She retreated too quickly, and the evil dragon was smashing an ice ball the size of a small mountain towards her. This time, it was diverted by her, and the ice ball did not hit Ji Xinyu, but almost hit Rongyue Tianlan's head. Rongyue Tianlan picked up his fan and casually flicked it. The ice ball spun in the air and was deflected back by him. The huge ice ball flew back at a much faster speed than before. The evil Jiao dragon couldn't dodge in time and was hit on the head by the ice ball, causing it to feel dizzy for a while. Ji Xinyu retreated far away to the side. She heaved a sigh of relief. Only then did she realize that after fighting for so long, her clothes were already drenched in sweat. She looked like she had just been fished out of the water, and her hair was stuck to her scalp. Fortunately, she was now in the form of a man. Otherwise, with these clothes sticking so tightly to her body, her true form would have been exposed. She wiped the sweat on her forehead with her hand and brushed back the hair that almost covered her eyes. She let out a long sigh of relief. After resting for a while, she felt that her hands and feet were trembling. She was really an arrow at the end of its flight. This man who had appeared out of nowhere made a move at the right time. She looked at the battlefield and saw that the devilishly beautiful man was already fighting with the flood dragon. This person looked cultured and refined, like a scholar who had come to the capital to take the imperial examinations. He looked as if he did not have the strength to truss a chicken, but she did not expect his moves to be so fierce. He used two types of weapons. One was a light folding fan, and the other was a treasure sword that shone with a cold light. The treasure sword was used as an attack. With a raise of his hand, it could transform into thousands of treasure swords, attacking the evil dragon from all directions without any blind spots. Chapter 2645. With the folding fan as a defense. When the evil flood dragon spat out ice blades and ice arrows, they were all deflected by the folding fan that looked like it would break with a pull. The moves he used were also ones that Ji Xinyu had never seen before. Perhaps he was as immovable as a mountain, his entire body shrouded in a gentle blue light, and the treasured sword and folding fan danced around him, making him look like a Buddha standing in the light of Buddha. Or he circled around the evil flood dragon, his movements light and graceful, like a dragon flying in the sky. The moves he used were extremely powerful, causing the evil flood dragon to suffer greatly. The scales on its body were missing piece by piece. The evil flood dragon was furious. The person in front of it was too despicable. It was as if he didn't like its scales, so he focused on peeling them off. Peeling off scales was also very painful. It was like peeling off its skin. The evil flood dragon deeply felt that it would be better to have its flesh cut off instead of being peeled off. In the past year, many people had tried to subdue it, but none of them were as abnormal as the one in front of it. It was completely against its definition of an immortal. The immortals it had seen were all merciful, and did things in an open and aboveboard manner. When they attacked its vital parts, making it the goal to kill it. Unlike the person in front of it, his goal was to torture it. He also didn't seem to be here to kill it, but to use it as a practice tool. The evil flood dragon even suspected that the person in front of it had taken a fancy to its scales, and wanted to peel them all off and let it run around naked. Too wretched. Perhaps it was because of the fight just now, but the evil flood dragon felt that its movements were not as agile as before. When it was fighting with Ji Xinyu, it could still scratch her with its claws from time to time, causing her to be slightly injured. But when it was fighting with the person in front of it, it had already used all of its strength, but it couldn't even touch the corner of his clothes. This feeling of being able to see, but not being able to hit was extremely frustrating. This was the first time the evil flood dragon had fought in such a cowardly manner. Its thoughts were already completely human, and it could understand human language, but it couldn't speak. Otherwise, it would have already scolded this person for being shameless. It roared in the flood dragon language to express its anger and disdain. Rongyu Tianlan acted as if she didn't hear anything. She played with her sword even more happily and leisurely said, "I'm a person who values fairness the most. You attacked me, an innocent passerby, and broke my yin-yang mirror. Naturally, you have to pay for this. Let's use your scale armor as a bargaining chip. Since my yin-yang mirror has shattered into 9,999 pieces, then this island lord will also peel 9,999 pieces of your qilin. It's a fair trade, a fair trade. Are you convinced? Submit my ass. Submit my ass." The evil flood dragon couldn't curse, so it could only roar. Roar. Rong Yuetian dug her ears and said in a calm voice, "It's fine as long as you're convinced. You don't have to shout so loudly. I understand. You know nothing." The evil Jiao dragon was so angry that smoke was almost coming out of its head. For the first time in his life, he hated himself for not being able to speak human language. It looked down on humans the most. Therefore, although it was successful in its cultivation, it always appeared in its original form. It was too lazy to cultivate into a human form. So naturally, it was too lazy to speak human language. It thought that as long as it could understand, it was fine. There was no need to speak the language of this lowly race. Now it regretted it. But it didn't have time to apply what it had learned. Rong Yuetian was actually having a good time fighting. It had been a long time since he had such a good fight. Although his original deity rank wasn't very high, he was very good at fighting. Back then, when he was in the Fanning continent, he was already invincible. Chapter 2646. It was lonely at the top, and a life without an opponent was as lonely as snow. That was why he ran away. Running away from the marriage was one thing, but looking for an opponent was another. He finally met an opponent in the Tianxi continent, Shen Jiuli. This opponent was too abnormal. He had completely defeated him at that time. This made him depressed, but it also made him want to cultivate. He often challenged Shen Jiuli to a fight. Although he was defeated every time, his kung fu was improving rapidly, as if he was riding on a rocket. The only regret was that Shen Jiuli didn't like to fight. Every time he wanted to fight with him, he had to think of a lot of reasons. Sometimes, he even had to promise a lot of benefits to the Dizun. He felt that he was quite miserable. He had to give others benefits and ask them to beat him up. After fighting with the Dizun for so many years, his kung fu was no longer the same as before. Moreover, his kung fu had been influenced by the Dizun for so many years. It was no longer the same style as before. The Dizun preferred to play chess with him, and didn't like to fight. The others were no match for Rongyue Tianlan. So Rongyue Tianlan hadn't had a good fight for many years. Now he actually met this evil dragon. Although its kung fu wasn't as good as his, it wasn't weak. Rongyue Tianlan was itching to fight before he fought. Now that he was fighting, he felt great. He was in high spirits. Peeling the scales was a delicate job, so Rongyue Tianlan and the evil dragon fought for a long time. Ji Xinyue was paying attention to the battle at first, but later, she sat on a mountain and closed her eyes to meditate. Only by meditating could she recover faster. When she meditated, there was a faint pink light circulating around her body. This was the protective light. With this layer of light, even if she was attacked, she would be safe and sound. Rongyue Tianlan could still spare some attention to look at her during the fight. When he saw the faint pink light around her body, his heart suddenly jumped. It was as if he was hit by something. The pink figure flashed in his mind, as if it could overlap with the woman in front of him. He was distracted for a moment, and the evil dragon's claw hooked the corner of his clothes. Chi. With a loud sound, a large slit appeared at the corner of his clothes, and his lapel also fell apart. "Stupid loach, how dare you ruin my clothes? Don't you know how valuable it is? Our feud is huge." Rongyue Tianlan was furious. With a casual flick of his hand, he tossed his outer robe to Ji Xinyue, who was meditating below. Ji Xinyue had just finished her meditation, and before she could get up, her face was covered by the robe. She reached out and pulled it down. Before she could see clearly what it was, Rongyue Tianlan's voice was heard. "It's broken." I'll have to trouble you to sew it for me. Ji Xinyue's lips twitched slightly. Did she look like someone who knew how to sew? She casually put the robe aside, not intending to care about it. Inadvertently, he lowered his head and found that his robe was torn in several places. One of them was at his chest and abdomen, and there was a big hole. Although she had used the transfiguration spell, and others saw her as a man, she could still see her original body. The hole in her chest exposed more than half of her chest. When the breeze blew, the hole was very cool. They were all exposed. Ji Xinyue subconsciously grabbed Rongyue Tianlan's robe and used it to cover her chest. She then raised her head to look at Rongyue Tianlan. He was focused on fighting the evil dragon and did not look at her. This person was indeed a pervert. Even when he was fighting in a robe, he still looked elegant and graceful, as if he could enter a painting at any time. Chapter 2647. Ji Xinyu stood up, turned around, and went behind a big rock. She took out a new robe from her storage space and put it on before walking out. She looked at the battlefield again, and her gaze focused slightly on Rongyue Tianlan. He was as beautiful as a painting, abnormally high in martial arts, elegant and humorous. Such a man couldn't be a nobody. The reason why she didn't recognize him was because he was someone who had just come to this continent. When these characteristics were put together, Ji Xinyu quickly formed a name in her heart. Rongyue Tianlan, her unmarried husband, the one who left for 3,000 years and made her the laughingstock of the entire Fanning continent. She didn't expect to meet him for the first time under such circumstances. Ji Xinyu's mood was very complicated. Who would have their entire life affected by one person? From a little princess who was loved by everyone to an abandoned woman who was not loved by her grandmother, uncles, or a lot of rumors. When she saw the main culprit, her mood would not be good. There was definitely resentment, and it wasn't small. When she was still a young girl with a fragile heart, she hated this person so much that she gritted her teeth. At that time, if she was in the present, she would probably have swung a knife and slashed him directly. But now, she felt much calmer. As expected, people matured after experience and thought about things more maturely. She was no longer the naive little princess of the past. She had also secretly investigated the matter of the betrothal. At that time, he was a young man in his prime, with beautiful women by his side. His robes were implicated in the affectionate gazes of countless women, and the hearts of countless young girls stopped for him. He was known as the most handsome man in the Fanning continent. Such a man was not someone who could be tied down by ordinary women, not to mention that he was forced to be engaged to a little girl in swaddling clothes. It was no wonder that he was scared away, and ran away for more than 3,000 years. It was his parents and her parents who were anxious for success that made it like this. She couldn't blame him. However, although she understood this rationally, it was indeed this person in front of her who caused her to fall into such a situation. No wonder she instinctively felt that he was an eyesore when she saw him just now. As expected, her sixth sense was the wisest. She gave a thumbs up to her sixth sense. She was not a saint, so it was impossible for her to not have any hatred in her heart. It was also impossible for her to bury the hatchet with a smile, much less become friends with him. Now, Rongyue Tianlan was completely beating up the evil dragon. Most of the scales on the evil dragon's body had been peeled off. At this moment, it almost had no strength to fight back. In that case, it would only take a few minutes for him to get rid of the evil flood dragon. Since he could get rid of the evil flood dragon, there was no need for her to stay here. She only wanted to get rid of the evil Jiao dragon, and didn't want to take the credit. Just let him take the credit. After all, it should have been his anyway. She placed Rongyue Tianlan's clothes on a relatively conspicuous large rock, turned around and left. Whoosh! The sound of the wind above his head suddenly became fierce. Ambushed. Her instincts as a martial artist made her subconsciously counterattack. Pfff. Her saber cut into the flesh with a sound. She almost sprayed blood all over her face. She hurriedly dodged and finally managed to avoid it. This island master's revenge is complete. I'll return this monster to you. Rongyue Tianlan's clear voice sounded from below. Ji Xinyue. However, she didn't have time to argue with Rongyi Wuxianlin. Chapter 2648. Because this guy was too immoral, he deliberately dodged towards Ji Shenyue during the fight with the evil dragon, causing the evil dragon to pounce on Ji Shenyue subconsciously. Ji Shenyue subconsciously slashed at it again, right on the neck of the evil dragon that had lost its scales, cutting half a foot deep. The evil dragon was already angry from being teased by Rong Yuishinlin, but it could not do anything to her. Now that it was hit by her, its target of hatred immediately changed. They attacked her fiercely from head to toe. The evil dragon probably wanted to get back at her, so it used all its remaining strength. Once it went all out, its power was not to be underestimated. The storm of attacks made Ji Shenyue unable to pay attention to Rong Yuishinlin, who was watching the show below with her arms crossed. Ji Shenyue was not easy to deal with. Moreover, she had rested for so long, and her energy was almost fully recovered. After watching the fight between Rong Yuishinlin and it, she figured out some ways to deal with it. Most importantly, more than half of the scales on the dragon's body were gone, and they were all the important parts. Without the protection of the scales, how could it ignore Ji Shenyue's big knife? Her big knife was very deadly when she waved it around. As long as it hit its body, it would leave a big bloody wound. Moreover, the wounds were getting deeper and deeper each time. An hour later, the evil dragon's corpse was lying on the hillside, its body cut up like a braised fish. Its two eyes were wide open, as if it had died with a grievance. These two despicable humans used the tactic of taking turns to kill it. They had an unfair advantage, and it despised them. Ji Shenyue also landed from the sky. She was slightly out of breath. The new clothes that she had just changed into were stained with the dragon's blood. At this moment it was sticking to her body and felt sticky. She wanted to dive into the water and take a good bath. She looked at the coiling dragon stream not far away, and paused for a moment. Rong Yuishinlin was sitting by the lake, stretching her legs and supporting her head with one hand. She looked very lazy and leisurely. There was a fishing rod in her hand, and a fish basket beside her. There were already 3 or 4 fish in the basket, alive and kicking. This style, was there something wrong? Ji Shenyue was stunned for a moment. Rong Yuetian seemed to have met a familiar old friend, and was very familiar with her. She waved at her and said, "How's your grilled fish? Let's roast a few. The fish here are actually fine-scaled fish. They taste pretty good." With this evil flood dragon here, it was a miracle that there were still fish in the water that were lucky enough to survive. Ji Shenyue did not want to be entangled with him any longer. In any case, the evil flood dragon had already been killed, and if it could no longer do evil, then her mission could be considered completed. There was no need to stay here any longer. She nodded slightly at Rong Yuetianlan. "I'm not hungry. Please help yourself. Goodbye." He turned around and was about to leave. "Do you have a problem with my fish? Or are you afraid that I'll poison you?" Behind him, Rong Yuetianlan spoke slowly. Ji Shenyue's footsteps paused for a moment. She didn't want to reveal her identity yet, so she came up with another excuse. "You're overthinking it. I'm just too dirty, and want to go back and take a bath." Rong Yuetianlan pointed her chin at the pool next to her. "Isn't this a ready-made bathing place?" She looked at her with a smile that was not a smile. "We are all men. Are you still afraid that I will see?" Ji Shenyue was speechless. She was indeed afraid that he would see. Even if she was a man now, she didn't want to take a bath in front of a man. Chapter 2649. I don't have the habit of bathing in front of others. Ji Shenyue's lips curled into a decent smile. "Thank you for your kindness. The mountains are high and the rivers are long. We'll meet again." "You seem to have a problem with me. Have I offended you?" Rong Yuetianlan asked her with his hands crossed. "No, this is the first time I've met you. If that's the case, then eat the fish before you leave." Rong Yuetianlan made the decision for her, put away the fishing rod, and began to clean up the fish in the basket. "I heard your stomach growling. A man must be honest. If you're hungry, then you're hungry. Why are you being so reserved? You're not a girl." He cleaned up the fish quickly, and in the blink of an eye, he finished one fish and stuffed it into Ji Shenyue's hands. Come, you roast it, we'll split the work. Ji Xinyu had a headache. Was this person so friendly to everyone? She was actually a very straightforward person. If she hadn't recognized Rongyue Tianlan's identity, she might have taken the initiative to make friends with him. But now forget it. If she continued to refuse, it would seem pretentious. It was just a meal of fish, it wasn't worth much. So she sat down. If that's the case, thank you. Ji Xinyu felt very magical. Originally, she thought that if she didn't stab this person with a knife after meeting him, she was already magnanimous enough. She didn't expect that she could be friends with him, sitting opposite him and roasting fish together. She felt that her thinking must have reached a new level, to be able to be so magnanimous. Ji Xinyu had been wandering outside for a long time. Her survival skills in the wild were quite good, and roasting game was one of her skills. The fish she roasted tasted very good. After Rongyue Tianlan tasted it, he gave her a thumbs up. Good cooking. Ji Xinyu smiled and didn't say anything. She roasted the fish quickly, and ate them quickly as well. In a short time, she finished 2 fish and stood up. I'm full, we'll leave now. Wait, I haven't finished eating, brother. It's very impolite for the host to leave when the guest hasn't finished eating. Ji Xinyu was speechless. There's no distinction between host and guest here, right? Why not? I am from the Eastern Sky Clan, but this is the Southern Sky Clan's territory, and you are also from the Southern Sky Clan. I came to your territory, so if you are not the master, then who is? Ji Xinyu. Fine, he had a point. Ji Xinyu sat down again and crossed her arms as she watched him eat. When he lowered his head, he realized that the blood stains on his body had disappeared. She was stunned and raised her head to look at him. I couldn't eat when I saw such a bloody scene, so I cast a cleaning spell on you, Rongyue Tianlan said calmly, and continued to eat the fish without raising her head. Although there were many immortals in the Fanning continent, no one knew this cleaning technique. This was the first time Ji Xinyu had heard of it. She sensed her body and found that the cleansing spell was really clean. Not only was her robe clean, even her body was as clean as if she had just taken a bath. This technique was truly miraculous. It was really a treasure for traveling in the Jianghu. If she learned this technique, she wouldn't have to worry about not having enough clothes to change into in the future. As if guessing Ji Xinyue's thoughts, Rongyue Tianlan raised his head and looked at her with a smile in his eyes. Do you want to learn? Ji Xinyue was stunned again. On the Fanning continent, there were many sects, so naturally, there were many techniques. Chapter 2650. On the Fanning continent, there were many sects and naturally, there were many skills. Every sect cherished their own skills very much, and they were unwilling to reveal even a little bit of it to people who were not from their sect. The person in front of her was actually willing to teach her such a magical skill? She looked at him warily and asked carefully, "What are your conditions?" Rongyue Tianlan glanced at her. This little girl's guard was unusually heavy, as if she had suffered a great loss. If he said that he had no conditions, she would probably be even more suspicious, so he might as well raise a condition. What should he raise? Rongyue Tianlan's gaze swept across the surroundings, and finally landed on the dragon. He smiled lightly, and when he smiled, it was especially beautiful and dazzling. There should be a core in the dragon's head. How about that core belong to me? Ji Xinyue finally breathed a sigh of relief, and agreed readily. Okay, do as you wish. She had never intended to take the flood dragon in the first place, and was not interested in its inner core. Rongyue Tianlan stood up, and casually took out a shiny dagger. A moment later, a purple pearl was dug out from the flood dragon's head. Ji Xinyue looked at his nimble movements, and couldn't help but guess in her heart. Did this person dig out cores often? He was too nimble. Rongyue Tianlan was a little surprised to see the pearl in his hand. It was actually a supreme-grade purple pearl. If such a pearl was refined properly, it could be refined into a spirit-boosting pill, which could increase a person's skills by 500 years after eating it. He was originally afraid that Ji Xinyue would be suspicious, so he casually mentioned it, but he didn't expect to earn a fortune. If he met the ancestor and mentioned this in the future, the ancestor would definitely despise him if he knew that he had used a small cleaning spell to trick a girl into giving him a supreme-grade purple pearl. Although Rong Yuishenlin liked to take advantage of others, he was still a gentleman, and he would not take advantage of girls. Now that he had gotten a big one for no reason, he felt a little apologetic. So not only did he impart the cleaning spell to Ji Shenyue, he also looked at her large blade that was almost curled, and asked very sincerely, "The blade of your blade is curled. Do you want me to sharpen it for you?" Ji Shenyue was speechless. She was shocked by his eagerness. Could it be that this person could tell that she was a girl? She had heard that he was quite a playboy. He had always been gentle, and took good care of women. No, not only was she dressed as a man, but she had also transformed her body into a man's. Logically speaking, no one should have seen through her disguise. Moreover, he had been calling her brother. Could it be? He was a homosexual in disguise. Ji Shenyue was so shocked by this last guess that she broke out in a cold sweat. She took a step back and put her broadsword into her storage space. She shook her head and said, "Thank you, but there's no need. Farewell." With a flash, he used an escape technique and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Rongyi Yuishenlin. He rubbed his nose. Was he scared away? Was his performance that frightening? His personality was actually quite lazy, and he was only gentle and courteous towards women. He was not attentive at all. However, today seemed to be a little strange. He was actually attentive to this girl. What was even more inexplicable was that he had an inexplicable good impression of this girl, and he couldn't help but want to treat her better. Could it be that he admired this girl because she was able to roam the Jianghu alone at such a young age, and was even able to fight the evil dragon one-on-one, and was even more outstanding than most men? Chapter 2651. Or was it because all the girls in the world were attracted to him, but only this girl looked at him, as if he was a block of wood, and ignored his charm? This made him a little unwilling, and wanted to attract her attention? Was he such a shallow person? Definitely not. Then it was the first reason. He admired such an independent and self-reliant girl. He had always been a kind and compassionate immortal. Didn't he help Ning Xuema several times back then? He waved his fan and analyzed his mood for a long time before he finally felt relieved. Just as he felt relieved, he saw the dragon's corpse and his heart skipped a beat. This girl spent so much effort, and took such a big risk to fight this evil dragon. Now that the evil dragon was finally dead, she actually forgot to cut off the dragon's head, and take it to the South Heaven's Arch to ask for credit. Wasn't that a big loss? He raised his hand, and cut off the evil dragon's head. The dragon's head was unusually big. Just its head alone was the size of a train. Rong Yuetian circled around the dragon's head, thinking about the possibility of stuffing the head into the storage space, and then finding the girl, and returning it to her. Suddenly, he heard the sound of wind in the distance. He looked up and saw 7 or 8 people rushing over like meteors. One of them was wearing a shiny yellow robe, and looked familiar. Rong Yuetian's heart skipped a beat. The South Heaven's Arch. The South Heaven's Arch actually came in person. The South Heaven's Arch, and the others saw the dragon's corpse on the ground, and then looked at the dragon's head. Their eyes lit up. It was hard to hide the surprise on their faces. When he saw Rong Yuetian's face, the South Heaven Thearch's body stiffened. His eyes were filled with surprise and complicated emotions. There was relief and pride in his relief. Son-in-law Tianlan. So the person who killed the dragon was you. Haha, you are indeed young and promising. You have made such a great contribution, as soon as you came back, and helped me get rid of this problem. Very good. Haha, very good. The other guards and generals beside the South Heaven's Arch were also happy. They immediately congratulated the South Heaven's Arch. Congratulations, Your Majesty. It is the blessing of our South Heaven clan to have such a good son-in-law. The third princess is so lucky. The South Heaven Emperor was even more delighted. He also laughed a few times. He raised his hand, and patted Rong Yue Tianlan on the shoulder. He said cheerfully, "Seeing that you secretly got rid of this big problem in my heart, I will not pursue the matter of you running away from the marriage. Come, follow me back to the palace. I will reward you well." Rongyi Yuishenlin. Fire Phoenix City was the capital of the Nantiang clan. Today, the citizens of Fire Phoenix City were in an uproar. The reason was none other than the 8th Highness of the Eastern Sky Kingdom, who had fled the marriage more than 3,000 years ago, had arrived. Not only did he come, but he also killed the evil Jiao dragon that had been causing chaos for a long time, causing the entire Nantiang clan to be in a state of panic. He personally beheaded the evil Jiao dragon. This was simply a huge greeting gift that could not be any bigger. It was more valuable than any other gift. The people of the Nantiang clan were originally dissatisfied with the 8th Highness, but at this moment, their dissatisfaction disappeared. The streets had already been cleaned, and the excited crowd crowded on both sides of the road, waiting to see the heroic figure of the 8th prince. At this moment, Ji Xinyue was sitting by the window on the second floor of a restaurant by the road. She looked down and rubbed her temples, feeling a headache coming on. There were too many people watching the commotion on the streets. When she looked down, it was densely packed with people's heads. She was a little trypophobic, so she looked away. The restaurant was still in an uproar because of this piece of news. At this moment, everyone was discussing it noisily. It was so noisy that Ji Xinyue's head hurt. She rubbed her glabella, regretting coming to this restaurant a little. She actually just wanted to drink some wine to refresh herself. She did not expect to see such a grand event. Chapter 2652. She took a sip of wine, and wondered if she should bring a gourd of wine to the inn to drink. Someone shouted in a low voice, "Everyone look, they're here! They're here!" With a whoosh, everyone rushed to the window and looked down. It was late autumn, and the weather was a bit cold. The people of the Southern Sky Clan were generally afraid of the cold, so at this time of the year, no one was willing to sit near the window. But at this moment this seat was in high demand. A large group of people rushed here, almost pushing Ji Xinyue down. She held onto the window to stabilize herself. The people behind her were like sardines in a can. It would be extremely difficult for her to turn around and squeeze out. She looked at the other windows. All the windows facing the street were like this. Countless heads stuck out from each window, and the necks of the people behind them were stretched out like giraffes. Since she was here, she might as well take it easy. She might as well watch the show. A few loud whips sounded in the street. A group of people slowly came from the distance. At the front was the Royal Guard of Honor in bright armor. Behind them was the Emperor's carriage. This time, the Emperor was sitting in a carriage with gauze draped around it. Everyone could see the people inside clearly. There were 2 people sitting side by side in the carriage. One was the Southern Sky Emperor, and the other was a blue-robed young master. When they saw the blue-robed young master's face, the crowd boiled. Beautiful. Simply too beautiful. So the rumors were true. This 8th Highness really was the most handsome man in the world. Beautiful like a poem or a painting. So beautiful that there was no trace of the mortal world's aura. What was even rarer was that he was truly handsome. The kind of handsome that a man should be. He was not feminine at all. He sat side by side with the Southern Sky Emperor in the carriage. He held his head with one hand and seemed a bit lazy. But the invisible aura on his body was not inferior to the Southern Sky Emperor's. The Southern Sky Emperor had always been known for his strong aura, but when he sat with him, he was automatically ignored. The crowd on both sides of the street was almost boiling, and the sound of people inhaling rose and fell. The Southern Sky Clan had always been more open, and some of the women in the crowd couldn't help but scream. The people on both sides of the street were better. After all, they were on both sides of the carriage, and did not dare to make a ruckus. However, the people in the taverns and restaurants on both sides of the street, who were leaning against the windows to watch the show, did not have so many scruples. Screams and discussions could be heard incessantly. Ji Xinyue felt that her ears were buzzing from the noise. Her ears were filled with praises for this 8th Highness. Her eyesight was good, so naturally, she could see Rongyue Tianlong clearly. She could even see his drooping, thick eyelashes. She was right. It was really him. She curled her lips into a smile, and praised herself for her wisdom in her heart. Rongyue Shenlin, who was in the imperial chariot, seemed to have sensed something and looked up. There were too many people paying attention to him. Countless heads of both men and women stretched out from the windows of the shops along the street. They were like little quails waiting to be nurtured in a quail's nest. He absent-mindedly withdrew his gaze, and couldn't help but rub the space between his eyebrows with his snow-white fingers. At the immortal Cloud Mountain, he had already explained clearly to the South Heaven Arch that he was not the one who killed the flood dragon, but someone else. He did not ask for Ji Xinyu's name, so he could not say who this other person was. He only said that it was a friend he met by chance. This credit should be credited to that friend. He also described Ji Xinyu's appearance to the South Heaven Arch. Chapter 2653. Ji Xinyu's features when she was dressed as a man were actually very ordinary. Other than being handsome, and not very tall, there were almost no other characteristics. The South Sky Emperor didn't say it out loud, but he didn't believe it in his heart. If there was such a capable person in his territory, he would have taken action long ago. Why would he allow the evil dragon to run rampant until now? And who did good deeds without leaving a name behind? What's more, this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make a name for himself. How could he disappear without a trace after killing the Jiao dragon? It didn't make sense at all. It must be his future son-in-law being modest. So the South Sky Emperor laughed and casually said that he would order to find another dragon slayer. But he still told the public that Rongyue Tianlan was the dragon slayer hero, and arranged everything. The group of people finally moved slowly. The onlookers then dispersed from the window. Ji Xinyue could finally sit back at her table and let out a sigh of relief. Although the dragon slayer hero was gone, the people's enthusiasm didn't dissipate. There was a lot of discussion in the restaurant, and everyone was discussing this gossip as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Do you think that His Highness Tianlan is here to propose marriage to our Nantiang clan? It should be. After all, he and our third princess have been engaged for more than 3,000 years. They should have gotten married long ago. If they had acted earlier, there would be children running all over the place now. Our third princess is so lucky to have such a good husband. Her husband was much more powerful than her two elder sisters' husbands. He's good-looking, has a noble status, and is so capable. The third princess's bitterness is finally over. Yes, I heard that when the third princess was born, a phoenix flew around the palace. It's an auspicious sign. So our third princess is also extraordinary. While these people were praising Rongyue Tianlan, they were also praising the third princess, making her seem like a celestial flower. Ji Xinyue raised her hand and took a sip of wine, shaking her head slightly. Over the years, she had heard a lot of gossip about herself, but most of it was negative, degrading her like a dog's tail grass. It was rare to hear praise, but now she was basking in Rongyue Tianlan's glory. This was truly a case of the same person failing the same person. There were two sides to a person's mouth. It was either praised or belittled. However, she didn't care about that anymore. Although the Fanning continent was a cultivation world, some of the rules were the same as the rules of the human world. For example, if a woman's status was low, a man could have 3 wives and 4 concubines, but a woman had to be faithful to a single man. For example, if a man wields a sword and a staff, he is a hero. If a woman doesn't like to wear makeup but prefers to wear a weapon, she is not a woman. The higher the level of a man's cultivation, the more respected he would be. As for a woman, if she could cultivate to the level of a lesser immortal, she would be able to extend her lifespan. That was enough. Their main responsibility was to support their husbands and raise their children. Everything else was insignificant. Therefore, on this continent, the strong were respected, and those with high aptitudes were valued. Women, on the other hand, were looked at for needlework, culinary skills, looks, virtuousness. No matter how high a woman's martial arts aptitude was, no one would pay attention to her. Ji Xinyue's talent had been astonishing since she was young, but no one had paid attention to her. If it wasn't for the special circumstances that led him to become a disciple of the Purple Cloud sect, he wouldn't have cultivated to the level of a divine lord. Of course, her kung fu was no longer the Purple Cloud sect's kung fu. She had other fortuitous encounters. Chapter 2654. A few years ago, she hated Rongyue Tianlan very much. She hated this person for ruining her life. Because of this hatred, she couldn't calm down from time to time. She even went mad once when she was practicing martial arts. She was in a coma for more than 10 years and almost lost her life. But then someone's words enlightened her. That person's words were always concise and comprehensive. Just live your life happily. As long as you get what you really want, why should you care about other people's words? That person was her savior. He just saved her casually. That person wore a silver mask, so she didn't know what he looked like. She didn't even know his name, because after that person saved her, he saw that she had good qualifications and taught her a few immortal skills. He left after spending less than 4 hours with her. Although this person was just a passerby in her life, he really woke her up. She had been wandering around in the Jianghu these years, traveling around the mountains and rivers as Xinyu. She had traveled all over the Fanning continent. When she encountered injustice, she would take care of it, make friends, chat with her friends over wine, or subdue demons together. Her days were actually quite free and unfettered. If she didn't encounter these things, she would still be a princess locked up in the palace. At most, she would be like her 2 sisters, married the husband she liked, and then stayed in another mansion to take care of her husband and children. Her greatest pleasure was to have a garden party with other noble ladies and gossip together, discuss their husbands, their wives, and some family trifles. They would compare with each other. Then they would wait for their husbands to come home in their respective mansions and courtyards. Those men were basically dissolute. Although they only had one wife, they didn't need to have too many concubines. Like her 2 brothers-in-law, her eldest brother-in-law was a great general of the Nantiang clan. After all, he married the princess of his country, so he restrained himself. In addition to his main wife, he only had 2 beautiful concubines. Compared to other nobles who often had 7 or 8 concubines, he was considered a good man. As for her second brother-in-law, he was a prince of the Western Sky clan. In addition to her second sister, who was his legal wife, he had also taken in 8 concubines in one breath. The drama of the struggle for favor in the harem was staged every day. Not to mention, this second brother-in-law was very handsome and flirtatious. He had a bunch of close female friends outside. In the eyes of men, the flowers at home were never as fragrant as the flowers in the wild. Therefore, he often traveled outside and slept with prostitutes. He often didn't return home for a year and a half. If Rongyue Tianlan didn't run away from the marriage, her life would probably be like eldest sister and second sister. This Rongyue Tianlan's appearance was so enchanting, and he was so capable. There were so many beauties around him. Once he got married, the number of beautiful concubines around him could be described as 3,000. Even if she became his legal wife, she could only be a member of his harem. Every day, she would have to rack her brains on how to fight for her husband's favor. That kind of life would be terrifying. This was not what she wanted. If she had to return to that kind of life now, it would be better to kill her. Therefore, it was better to let Yu Tianlan escape from the marriage. Better to run away from the marriage. Because he ran away from the marriage, she could live a carefree life that was different from any other princess. Therefore, Ji Xinyu didn't hate him these few years. In her subconscious, she even hoped that Rongyue Tianlan would never come back. As long as he didn't come back, she didn't have to think about marriage. But now he was back. Chapter 2655. Whether he came to cancel the engagement or to propose marriage, she didn't want to see him. Because if he canceled the engagement, her father would have to find another husband for her. There would always be a man who was not afraid of death and greedy for wealth who would marry her. It wasn't good to propose marriage. They were old enough. Once he proposed marriage, the marriage would be put on the agenda quickly. She would have to marry in less than a year. Rongyue Tianlan was indeed outstanding enough. He could be said to be a demon. He was the ideal lover and husband in the hearts of thousands of girls. But she didn't like it. She even felt irritated when she saw him. She felt inexplicably uncomfortable and just wanted to stay far away from him. This emotion was a little strange. She was puzzled at first, but then she found the reason. She probably hated him for thousands of years, and it had become a conditioned reflex. Although she didn't hate him now, her subconscious hadn't completely changed. She looked at the long street after the bustle and rubbed her eyebrows. This person came. No matter what his purpose was, her father would definitely search for her with all his might. She had to go back again. But she didn't want to go back. She really wanted to turn off all the sound-transmitting talismans on her and hide for a few years. She could turn off the other sound-transmitting talismans on her. But the special sound-transmitting talisman, given by her master, couldn't be turned off for more than 3 days. If it exceeded 3 days, she would be considered rebellious and would be expelled from the sect. Her master, God Ziyun, probably only accepted her as a female disciple in his life, so he took extra care of her. He was always afraid that she would be abducted or make other mistakes, so he set this rule for her alone. The special sound-transmitting talisman had to be turned on all the time. Even if there was a last resort, it couldn't be turned off for more than 3 days. She took out the golden sound-transmitting talisman and looked at it. It had been turned off for 2 days. She could still delay it for a day. But what about a day later? She still couldn't delay it. She had to face this sooner or later. Forget it. Running away wasn't what a hero would do. She wasn't an ostrich. After she returned to the inn, she turned on the sound-transmitting talisman. Sure enough, as soon as she turned on the sound-transmitting talisman, she heard her master's dignified voice. Sure enough, he asked her to return to Nantian Palace immediately. He said that her father was looking for her urgently. She replied to her master lazily. Master, my father must have summoned me to the palace because of Rong Yu Tianlan's arrival. If I rush back as soon as he comes, how embarrassing would that be? Don't you think so too, master? Sir God Ziyin agreed. That's true. This brat has ignored you for more than 3,000 years. You should teach him a lesson. Why don't you go back tomorrow? Master, I'm busy right now. I'll go back in 10 days. Sir God Ziyin pondered for a moment before replying. All right. The voice sounded proud again. I told you that I couldn't contact you. I don't know when I'll be able to return. Let that brat be anxious for a while. Master is wise. Stinky girl. This is actually your good fortune. That brat is indeed not bad. Your senior and junior brothers are also discussing him. It's a good marriage for you. You have to learn to control yourself. He had raised Ji Shenyue and was her master in name, but he treated her even better than her father. He also worried about her more than her father. Ji Shenyue coughed. If she said that she didn't want this husband, she didn't know if her master's jaw would drop from shock. Chapter 2656. Ji Shenyue coughed. If she said that she didn't want this husband, she didn't know if her master's jaw would drop to the ground. She would probably use all kinds of arguments to bombard her, to prove the happiness of this marriage. She didn't answer directly. Master, we'll talk about it in 10 days. She needed to think about it first and come up with a foolproof plan. Also, the jasper snow lotus that grew on the snowfall peak should be blooming in these few days. The jasper snow lotus was a kind of strange flower that grew on icy peaks that were so cold that it was almost inaccessible. It only bloomed once every 300 years and would wither after a single day of blooming. Once it withered, all of its effects would disappear. It had many effects, but the most famous one was that this flower had an extremely strong beautifying effect. Eating one flower could make a person instantly 500 years younger. It could even last for 1,000 years. It was a pity that this flower grew in a harsh environment and was protected by fierce beasts, so only those with the cultivation of a divine monarch or above could harvest it. Thus, it was extremely precious and was something that every woman who loved beauty dreamed of, but was also extremely difficult to obtain. Ji Shenyue herself wasn't interested in this flower, but she had accidentally heard her mother mention this flower, so she longed for it. Ji Shenyue remembered it in her heart. A few days ago, she went around the snowy peak and finally found one. Unfortunately, that jasper snow lotus was only a bud at that time and couldn't be harvested. Thus, she calculated the time when the flower would bloom and made a mark. Only then did she return. This matter couldn't be delayed, because this place was quite far from Snowfall Peak. Even with Ji Shenyue's speed, it would take her 3 days to get there. It would also take her 1 day to go up the mountain to harvest it. And she still had to rush back. 10 days was quite a lot of time. And 10 days later was her mother's birthday. If she presented this flower to her mother, it would definitely make her mother happy. Then, she would think of a way to resolve this marriage. It would be the best of both worlds. In fact, Ji Xinyu didn't wait for 10 days. She returned on the 5th day. There was no other reason. It was because her master had sent her a voice transmission at top speed, saying that her fiancé, who had returned late, was not here to propose marriage. He was here to cancel the engagement. Her master's tone was rather angry. Even God Ziyun, who had always paid attention to the image of an expert, could not help but swear. After scolding the other party a few times, he gave her an idea. Xinyu, don't be anxious. Your father is trying to salvage the situation. How about this? You might as well disappear for a few hundred years. Chapter 2657. But now, because she was in a hurry, she directly appeared in Nantian Palace, and directly appeared in the Empress Phoenix Perch restaurant. She scared the maids who were serving in the hall, and made them tremble. They opened their eyes wide as if they had seen a ghost. And the Empress was sitting on the heated bed crying. She had suffered a great blow. Her face was extremely pale, and she was slightly out of breath. Suddenly seeing Ji Xinyu, she was also shocked. Xinyu, these few days, she had been trying to contact her daughter, but she couldn't. She didn't expect her to appear at this time. And appear so suddenly. The maids outside didn't even come in to report. Oh, third sister, you're finally back. We've been looking for you these days. A voice came from the corner with a bit of sarcasm. Yes, third sister, where did you go? Father and mother have been worried sick about you. Another voice sounded concerned, but was actually mocking. Ji Xinyu turned around and glanced at the two sisters. She didn't expect them to be here. Ji Xinluo's gaze suddenly focused on her body, and he exclaimed, a third sister, why are you so dirty? What kind of tattered robe are you wearing? So embarrassing. Strange, third sister, you're bleeding. Look, there are several bloodstains. Ji Xinmeng also made a fuss at the side. Ji Xinyu frowned slightly. When she was plucking flowers at the Snowfall Peak, she was slightly injured in the fight with the fierce beasts, and there were a few wounds on her body. These wounds were all superficial. She didn't care about them at all, and was even too lazy to treat them. Of course, she was afraid that her parents would be worried, so she usually dressed herself very neatly when she came back. Naturally, she wouldn't let them see the wounds on her body. This time, she rushed back in a hurry, and only changed back to her original appearance, but forgot to change her clothes. The Empress also noticed the wounds on her daughter's body, and immediately held her hand. Xinyu, this what happened? As she spoke, she was about to pull up her sleeves to check her body. Ji Xinyu hurriedly said, It's nothing, mother. It's just a scratch when I fought with the senior brothers. It's nothing serious. She was about to withdraw her arm. However, the Empress held her tightly. She wouldn't be at ease if she didn't check it herself. Naturally, Ji Xinyu wouldn't forcefully use her internal energy to shake off her mother. She could only silently use her internal energy to cover her wound with an illusion technique. As a result, the wound that the Empress saw was really just a layer of skin, and only a few strands of blood seeped out. Even so, it still made the Empress' heart ache. She immediately ordered someone to bring the medical kit, and personally applied the ointment. Third sister. It's not that second sister wants to nag at you, but as a girl, you should act like a girl. It's really inappropriate to play with a bunch of men every day, and your reputation is also bad. Otherwise, the 8th prince wouldn't have broken off the engagement with you. Ji Xinmeng said earnestly. That's right. Originally, the 8th prince of the Eastern Sky clan had finally returned, and he was so outstanding. The sisters were all very happy for you. They felt that although third sister had all kinds of shortcomings, in any case, she had taken advantage of a good marriage. Being able to marry a good husband was also good. She didn't expect that. They were discussing the matter of breaking off the engagement in the hall. It made Father Emperor lose face in front of all the civil and military officials. Ji Xinluo also sighed. These two sisters were used to singing the same tune. They seemed to be concerned, but were actually gloating. Chapter 2658. The past few days had been quite torturous for the two sisters. Rongyue Tianlan's arrival was like a bucket of boiling oil, splashing the hearts of the two sisters. It made them jealous and hateful. Rongyue Tianlan was too outstanding. Furthermore, he had killed the evil flood dragon and made such a great contribution. Compared to him, their husbands were just trash. He was left behind by 10,000 streets. The two sisters were indeed beautiful, and they were the best in the entire Fanning continent. Their needlework and cooking skills were superb, and when they were outside, they had the demeanor of a virtuous lady. Other than the fact that they were the children of a concubine, they had almost no shortcomings. They felt that they were several streets ahead of Ji Xinyue. But Ji Xinyue had gotten the best husband. After Rongyue Tianlan escaped, they were the ones who enjoyed the show the most. So whenever they saw Ji Xinyue, they couldn't help but make a few sarcastic remarks about her and show off how outstanding their husband was. These had become deeply ingrained in them. It seemed that this was the only way to make them feel better. They didn't expect Rongyue Tianlan to come back and cause such a big commotion. 2 days ago, the two sisters saw Rongyue Tianlan's true appearance at the banquet, and their hearts felt like they were being scratched by a cat. The fire of jealousy was about to burst out of their chests. Especially because of Rongyue Tianlan's arrival, their father was once again amiable to Ji Xinyue's mother, Empress Lishuan. He even rewarded the empress with many good things, and his favor to the palace grew. This caused imperial concubine He, who was originally favored, to feel even more jealous. She kept blowing wind in front of her two daughters, making the two daughters even more unhappy. At all times, they wanted to trip up Ji Xinyu and ruin this marriage. Coincidentally, they met Rongyue Tianlan, who was strolling in the palace garden yesterday. Rongyue Tianlan unintentionally asked about Ji Xinyue's whereabouts, and the two sisters took the opportunity to add fuel to the fire. They fully used the palace infighting method to praise Ji Xinyue openly and belittle her secretly, trying their best to give Rongyue Tianlan the impression that Ji Xinyue was ugly and immoral, rude and uncultured. Rongyue Tianlan didn't say anything at that time, but a hint of contemplation seemed to flash through his beautiful eyes. Then today he proposed to cancel the marriage at the banquet. This made the two sisters extremely happy. They immediately ran to the empress palace. Nominally, they came to comfort their imperial mother, but in reality, they came to see a joke. Now that they saw Ji Xinyu, who had hurriedly returned, they naturally couldn't hold back their pride and mocked her, revealing their true colors. After saying those words, they couldn't help but stare at Ji Xinyu's face, wanting to see her embarrassment. Ji Xinyu only glanced at them coldly, then turned to ask the empress' personal maid, "Didn't I order that these two women are not allowed to enter the central palace? Who let them in?" The last time she left, she had indeed instructed him to do so. But these two were still princesses after all. They had married well and had noble statuses. So when they came to the palace under the banner of paying respects to the empress, the maids didn't dare to stop them. Hearing these two princesses speak harshly to the empress, although they didn't like it, they didn't dare to do anything to them. The empress, on the other hand, had a weak personality, so she couldn't bring herself to chase them away. So she let them bully her. Ji Xinyu looked at the maid's expressions and already guessed what was going on. Her pretty face immediately darkened. "This is the Empress Palace. How can any random person come in? Since you are the Empress' personal maids, you should bear the heavy responsibility of protecting the Empress and not let anyone humiliate you. Now that you're like this, are you worthy of the title of palace maids?" Chapter 2659. Her words made the maids lower their heads in shame and shame. Ji Shenluo and her sister were anxious. "Third sister, what are you saying? Who are you calling a cat or a dog? Make yourself clear." "That's right. One of us is the general's wife, and the other is the princess of Bei Tian Kingdom. She's your royal sister, so how can you say such unreasonable things?" Ji Shenhua didn't even look at them. She only looked at the maids. Do you still need this princess to tell you what to do now? She then added, no matter what happens, this princess will take care of it for you. You only need to protect the empress. With her words, the maidservants were emboldened. They had long disliked the two sisters. Now they could finally chase them away. A row of maids immediately stepped forward. As the empress's maids, their martial arts were not bad. Although they were far from Ji Xinyue's, it was more than enough to deal with Ji Shenluo and her sister. Ji Shenluo and her sister were so angry that their noses were crooked. They were angry and went all out. They stood there and said sternly, "Who dares to chase us away? How dare you?" Before they could finish their sentence, a red shadow flashed over. Before the two sisters could see what it was, they felt their waists tighten, and they were lifted into the air a moment later. There were two thuds outside the courtyard, followed by a shrill scream and Ji Shenluo's curses. Ji Xinyue waved her hand, and the red whip returned to her. It shrunk to an inch long and automatically entered her storage pouch. It was the first time the maids in the Empress's palace saw the princess in action. Clean, neat, and wonderful. This whip technique could be called magical. The princess's martial arts were so strong. The princess's attack was so cool. These maids all felt proud and elated, and their gazes towards Ji Shenyu were filled with reverence. Empress Luxian was a little worried. "Shenyu, if you treat them like this, I'm afraid they will cry to your father. At that time there will be trouble." Ji Shenyu sighed in her heart. Her imperial mother was good at everything, but her personality was a bit too soft. She was timid, and she worried about personal gains and losses. This was why these people could ride on her head and abuse her. Imperial mother, there's no need to be afraid of them. They were the ones who were rude first. She looked at the maids. Did you all see how rude they were when they saw the empress? Those maids were all clever people. They immediately understood Ji Yu's meaning, and started to talk about the rude behavior of the two princesses in front of the empress. These two princesses relied on the soft personality of the empress, and did not restrain themselves in front of her. There were indeed some inappropriate actions that fell into the eyes of these servant girls. Originally, these maids were angry but didn't dare to say anything. Now that the princess was in charge, they could finally say it out loud. Ji Shenyu listened to a few of them, smiled slightly and nodded. Very good, in the future, if His Majesty asks, just answer truthfully. The maids all nodded. Ji Shenyu was too lazy to argue with others. But that didn't mean she would tolerate her mother being bullied. It was fine if she didn't make a move, but once she made a move, she would definitely be able to suppress everyone present. Empress Luxian looked at her daughter and sighed in relief. The invisible aura of her daughter actually made her waist stiffen. Chapter 2660. However, she still had a huge worry in her heart. She grabbed her daughter's hand and said anxiously, "Shenyu, you should leave quickly. Come back in a few years." Ji Shenyu raised her eyebrows. "What do you mean, mother?" Empress Luxian sighed. "That Rongyue Tianlan has already proposed to cancel the engagement. Your father is trying to deal with him. He can't cancel the engagement on his own. As long as you're not present, he can't cancel it. This way, your father can still salvage the situation. Maybe there will be a change in the future. So go hide for a few years and don't let him find you. He has delayed you for more than 3,000 years. Even if you delay him for a few years, it won't be worth anything. Maybe you don't need to hide for a few years. A few months will do. Your father has already negotiated with the East Sky King. Rongyue Tianlan canceling the engagement was his own doing. The East Sky King didn't know about it beforehand. The East Sky King has already promised your father that he will do his best to dissuade his son from doing things his own way. Shenyu, what are you doing?" Ji Shenyu had already started to instruct people to bring her a princess dress, and hurriedly put it on. Hearing Empress Luxian's question, she only replied with a few words, "Go to Langda Hall." Langda Hall was the hall where the South Sky King was holding a banquet. There were no empty seats in the hall, but the atmosphere was a bit strange. The South Sky King's expression wasn't very good. The cold air on his body could freeze people 1,000 miles away. The other civil and military officials were sitting on pins and needles. They didn't dare to leave, but they also didn't dare to stay. Of course, there were also some high-ranking officials who were filled with righteous indignation. During the negotiation between the South Sky King and Rongyue Tianlan, they interjected from time to time to express their dissatisfaction and anger. Rongyue Tianlan's expression was very calm. He even waved a fan in his hand. After he explained his purpose, he felt much more at ease. The South Sky King and his officials said a lot of good and bad words, but they still couldn't make Rongyue Tianlan change his mind. In the end, the South Sky King was finally angry. Eighth Highness, although you've killed the evil flood dragon and contributed greatly to the Nantiang clan, that is that. You've delayed Xinyu for over 2,000 years and caused her to suffer so much. Isn't it a bit too heartless for you to break off the engagement now? Rongyue Tianlan raised the fan in his hand, and his handsome face was slightly apologetic. Your Majesty, Tianlan also knows this, but marriage is about mutual consent. The fact that this marriage was arranged back then was not Tianlan's wish. In Tianlan's heart, there is another love, and I dare not delay your beloved's youth. That's why I'm here to cancel this engagement. Sorry. Rongyue Tianlan looked gentle and elegant like jade, and was polite to everyone, but in fact, she liked to cut the Gordian knot. Once she decided on something, even the nine-headed bird could not pull her back. Since he had made up his mind to withdraw from this marriage, he naturally didn't want to delay any longer. It was better to end it quickly, and the best reason to withdraw from a marriage was to fall in love with someone else, so he naturally brought this up as an excuse. Besides, he wasn't lying. There was indeed someone in his heart. Although he hadn't seen the appearance of the woman in his heart, and didn't even know which continent she was from, he subconsciously felt that the woman was his destined partner. No one would doubt his reason. After all, he was so outstanding, and had the capital to attract bees and butterflies more than anyone else. He had drifted outside for over 3,000 years, so it was natural for him to have one or two female confidants. The South Sky King was also prepared for this. Chapter 2661. The South Sky Emperor was also mentally prepared for this. Hearing what he said, the South Sky Emperor disagreed. Eighth Highness, having love in your heart is not a reason to break off the engagement. Which man doesn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? My Xinyu is not a jealous person. If you marry Xinyu, you can take that woman as a concubine in the future. Isn't it better to have the best of both worlds? Rongyue Tianlan shook his head slightly. Your Majesty, Tianlan only likes her. I don't plan to marry more in this life. He was actually very envious of the love between Di Zun and Ning Xuema. Holding your hand, growing old together, a pair for the rest of their lives. Although he wouldn't grow old, he still yearned for a pair for life. He was sure he could do it. As for having more wives and concubines, he didn't care about it at first, but after hanging out with Di Zun for a long time, he was also affected by Di Zun. According to Di Zun, having more wives and concubines was boring and asking for trouble. According to Ning Xuema, it was called a stud horse. So much so that when Ning Xuema first met him, she thought that he was a genuine stud horse because he had a romantic appearance that attracted peach blossoms. All the men present didn't agree with Rongyue Tianlan's statement. How boring it was to have one wife every day. Although as immortals, these wives wouldn't grow old, they would still be aesthetically tired. Women were more interesting when they were new. These people naturally opened their mouths to refute the absurdity of Rongyue Tianlan's words, as if Rongyue Tianlan had said something unbelievable. Rongyue Tianlan let them speak, waving his fan and chuckling without answering. People who walked different paths couldn't make plans together. These people's thinking couldn't be changed by a debate. Those people spoke passionately for a while, but seeing that Rongyue Tianlan still didn't respond, they gradually felt bored and stopped talking. The South Sky Emperor made up his mind and said, "Is your sweetheart unwilling to be a concubine? Then, how about I promise you that you can marry her as a concubine? She will be on the same level as Xinyu." This was already the biggest concession he could make. But Rongyue Tianlan was determined this time. He still shook his head and refused to budge. The South Sky King was so angry that the veins on his forehead bulged. He blurted out, Don't tell me you want Xinyu to be your concubine. After all, you were engaged to Xinyu first. Rong Yuetian sternly said. Nephew definitely doesn't mean that. This nephew's heart already belongs to someone else, so I can only let your daughter down. South Heaven Emperor took a deep breath and said, Eighth Highness, did you hear some rumors about Xinyu? You also know that rumors are extremely unreliable. In reality, Xinyu is still extremely outstanding. You'll know when you see her. Come back in a few days and meet with her. Then we can discuss this matter again, okay? Since he couldn't persuade him directly, the South Heaven Emperor decided to use a delaying strategy. Rongyue Tianlan didn't allow him to delay. He closed his fan in his palm and said, Your Majesty, this time, Tianlan wants to break off the engagement. It's because of Tianlan's own reasons. It's not because your daughter isn't good. Tianlan knows that your daughter is outstanding enough. However, everyone has their own fate. Therefore, it's the same whether we meet or not. After a pause, he continued, No matter what, it's Tianlan's fault this time. Tianlan has let your daughter down. Tianlan will try to make it up to her. I ask your Majesty not to force me. He really wanted to make it up to his rumored fiancée. For example, he heard that she was ugly. He could use the face-changing technique to turn her into a great beauty. Chapter 2662. He really wanted to make up for his rumored fiancée. For example, he heard that she was ugly, so he could use the face-changing technique to turn her into a great beauty. For example, he could introduce a few young talents to her. These were all things he could do. At this point, there seemed to be no room for negotiation. The South Sky Emperor was furious, but he couldn't do anything. If a cow didn't drink water, he couldn't cut off its head and drink it directly, right? At this banquet, not only were the civil and military officials of the Nantiang clan present, but there were also people from other clans. These people had heard that Rongyue Tianlan had arrived and killed the evil dragon, so they rushed over to congratulate her. Now that things had come to this point, they didn't know how to persuade her. Of course, these people who came to congratulate might not be sincere. After all, the marriage between the Nantiang clan and the East Sky clan might not be a good thing for other clans. Now they couldn't wait for this marriage to fail. At this moment, Rongyue Tianlan wanted to cancel the marriage, which fulfilled their wish. They were more than happy to watch this show. A few people began to speak up for Rongyue Tianlan. Your Majesty, since this eighth prince is really unwilling, why must you force him? As the saying goes, a forcibly picked melon is not sweet. That's right, Your Majesty. Eighth prince is a dragon among men. He is not a match for an ordinary woman. Princess Xinyu, on the other hand, haha, I'll be fair. Everyone knows how Princess Xinyu is, so there's no need to say more. Perhaps it's possible for her to be matched with a child from an ordinary family. But it's indeed too difficult for her to be matched with eighth prince. Your Majesty, don't force her. That's right, Your Majesty. Eighth prince has indeed let the Nantiang clan down by canceling the marriage. But he has also made up for it, hasn't he? He killed the evil dragon and removed a big problem for the Nantiang clan. It's enough to use this merit to make up for the cancellation of the marriage. That's right, Your Majesty. It's important to know one's own limitations. Princess Xinyu has no talent, no virtue, no looks, and no ability. Even if she was matched with a child from a noble family, I'm afraid they wouldn't be happy. If she was the daughter of an ordinary family, it would be a problem whether she could get married or not. Now she is forcing eighth prince to marry her. This is too. How can a pheasant be matched with a phoenix? This is a mistake. Eighth prince came down to cancel the marriage. These people harbored ulterior motives and spoke one after another, openly and covertly belittling Ji Xinyu, as if she was worthless. The South Heaven Emperor was so angry that his face turned ashen. Rongyue Tian also frowned slightly. Annulling the marriage was his business. He didn't want to hear these people talking about a lady so unbearably. The Nantiang clan's minister was furious. How can you say that? His Majesty only valued this marriage, so he wanted His Highness the eighth prince to be cautious. Moreover, the princess is not in the palace. Even if we want to cancel the engagement, we have to wait for her return before we can make a decision. The princess is not as unbearable as you say. She is also not without talent. I heard that her beauty can topple cities. Although she does not know how to cook, her martial arts are not bad. She is also one of the top figures in the Purple Cloud sect. Someone laughed. Looks that could topple cities? Was there something wrong with the eyes of those who said she was a beauty? If she was born beautiful, then why did she never attend the garden parties of the noble ladies? That's because the princess isn't often in the palace. Naturally, I won't participate in these garden parties. Excuses. Was it too ugly to be seen in public? That's why he came up with such a lame excuse. Nonsense. In the future, the princess will come out. Everyone will know whether the princess is beautiful or ugly at a glance. Chapter 2663. Nonsense. In the future, the princess will come out, and everyone will know whether the princess is beautiful or ugly. Besides, our third princess is not a common woman who disdains to learn the martial arts of ordinary women. Her martial arts are very powerful. A minister who knew Princess Jishin better defended her with a red face. Ha ha ha, how powerful can a woman's martial arts be? It was nothing more than some flowery martial arts. Moreover, when a woman practiced martial arts, not only would she not be able to achieve anything, but she would also make her white and tender skin rough. Could it be that this princess practiced martial arts because she was ugly? That way, she can find an excuse for her ugliness. Maybe she is a big and rough tomboy. What kind of martial arts can a woman practice? Saying that she is one of the top in the Purple Cloud sect, I'm afraid that her senior and junior brothers see that she is a woman, so they let her have her way. She doesn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and really thinks that she has some good martial arts? If she really walks the Jianghu, she will be raped at any moment. Oh no, she is so ugly, naturally she won't be raped. Maybe with her appearance, she will scare the thieves away. Ha ha ha. A man in a blue robe said in a mocking tone. Then he raised his head and laughed. His tone was disdainful, and his attitude was arrogant. This man's appearance could be considered handsome, but his slightly drooping eyebrows added a bit of a sinister and harsh aura to him. His name was Changbu Bai, and he was a famous cultivator in the Sanning continent. It was said that his attainments in martial arts had reached the peak. Everything else was fine, but his mouth was extremely mean, and he had offended many people. However, due to his profound martial arts, there were very few people who could really punish him. Most people were angry, but didn't dare to say anything. This also made him more and more arrogant and condescending. He came with a friend, and at this time, he couldn't help but show off his mean divine ability. The South Sky Emperor heard that their words were getting more and more ridiculous, and his face turned ashen. He slammed his hand on the table, and a bang sounded. It made everyone's heart tremble, and they finally stopped shouting. What are you trying to do by slandering Xinyu in front of me? The South Sky Emperor was not someone to be trifled with. At this moment, his face darkened and his power was shocking. Those gossipers were frightened by him. They looked at each other, and finally shut their mouths. Changbu Bai was used to being arrogant. He raised his head and laughed. We are only speaking the truth. Is your majesty not allowing us to speak the truth? How about this? Didn't you say that the princess's martial arts were good? Then ask her to come out and compete with my little attendant. If she can win, I will admire her kung fu. The princess is not in the palace, someone retorted. Where can a princess go? Did she not dare to come out? Then this young master will raise the stakes. If she can defeat my little helper, not only will I admire her, I will also kowtow to her 3 times. Changbu Bai was even more pleased with himself. Suddenly, a soft laugh came from the sky. The laughter was ethereal and clear, like a jade bell swaying in the wind. Everyone was startled and looked towards the source of the voice, but they did not see anyone. In this hall, there were only a few maids serving wine, and there were no other women. However, the faint laughter just now came from a young girl, and a young girl at that. Who is it? Someone shouted. This princess only heard that women sometimes love to gossip. Now it seems that men also like to gossip out of nothing. Chapter 2664. This princess has only heard that women sometimes love to gossip. Now it seems that men also like to gossip out of nothing. That voice continued to sound with a hint of mockery. Everyone was startled. Even the fan in Rongyue Tianlan's hand paused slightly. South Sky Emperor's expression changed. Shenyu. He originally did not want his daughter to come back, but now that he heard her voice, he felt a bit complicated. These people said that his daughter was too unpleasant. This was the first time he had heard this kind of rumor, so he was naturally very angry. However, his daughter was not in front of him, so he could not find any strong evidence to refute it. He did not dare to say anything else, but he was very confident in his daughter's appearance. To say that his daughter was ugly, they were really blind. When the men in the hall heard this voice, their hearts skipped a beat. This voice sounded so beautiful. They did not know how she looked, but this voice was really too pleasant to listen to. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was like a gurgling mountain spring. Changbu Bai was also startled. He sneered. The princess is indeed here. However, hiding like this, is it shameful? This princess is upright, and her actions are upright. What is there to be shameful about? Only those with dirty thoughts would think of others as dirty. That voice continued to chuckle. Since there is nothing shameful, then come out. What kind of skill is hiding in the dark? Changbu Bai shouted. Come out and fight 300 rounds with my servant. If you win against him. He was about to make a wish when he was coldly interrupted by that voice. You can do it yourself. What? Everyone was startled. Changbu Bai was stunned for a moment before he laughed loudly. If this young master makes a move, I'm afraid you won't need to make a move in the future. This young master disdains to win against a woman. That voice was soft and indifferent. You don't even dare to accept a woman's challenge. So what are you bragging about? Who says this young master doesn't dare to accept? This young master only feels that winning against a woman is not honorable. I'm also afraid that I will break you and make you cry in front of this young master. Changbu Bai said proudly. So you're saying that you accept? Then what will you do if you lose? That voice asked. If this young master loses, I will kowtow to you 8 times and bark 8 times like a dog. Changbu Bai was full of confidence. Good. That's what you said. Everyone here can bear witness to it. That voice chuckled. Of course they all bear witness. What's the point of blabbering? Come out. Don't hide outside the palace and use telepathy. This is something I've been playing with for a long time. Changbu Bai snorted coldly. Before he could finish his sentence, he suddenly noticed that everyone was looking behind him. Startled, he turned around abruptly and his body stiffened. Not far behind him stood a young girl. She wore a rainbow-colored palace dress specially made for the princess of the Nantiang clan. Her body was as slender as a willow, and her black hair was draped over her shoulders like a waterfall. Her face was covered with a thin veil, revealing only a pair of clear eyes and a full forehead. Mist shrouds cold water and moon shrouds sand. Although most of her face was covered by a veil, she had a kind of temperament, a kind of light and refined temperament. Especially that pair of eyes. They were so clear that they seemed to contain water, and so bright that they seemed to contain stars. At this moment, that pair of eyes coldly stared at Changbu Bai, causing Changbu Bai's heart to tremble. You are Princess Shenyu. Genuine. The young girl spat out these words. Changbu Bai. Chapter 2665. Everyone. How was this girl as ugly as the rumors said? She was clearly a femme fatale, all right. Rongyue Tianlan's fan also froze in his hand. He naturally recognized her, the mysterious girl who could compete with the evil dragon. He never thought that his rumored fiancée would be her. She was completely different from the rumored Princess Shenyu. He never thought that he, Rongyue Tianlan, would make a mistake. If he had known that she was his fiancée, then he, the girl in pink's figure flashed through his mind, and a familiar pain flashed through his heart. He lowered his eyes slightly. Even if he knew it was her, he would still break off the engagement, right? After all, he already had someone else in his heart. While he was in a daze, Changbu Bai spoke again. Little girl, do you really want to fight with me? Fists and legs have no eyes if I hurt you. Such a beautiful girl. He felt that if he really wanted to fight with her, he wouldn't be able to do it. Since it's a martial arts competition, then it doesn't matter if you're injured or dead. This girl looked delicate, but her words were very straightforward. These two sentences were also very heroic, causing everyone to be stunned again. Chang Bubai had a bad habit. Although he was a harsh person, he had a tender heart for the fairer sex. He would always give in to beautiful girls. He looked Ji Xinyu up and down. You really are the princess. I heard that the princess is very ugly. Ji Xinyu's eyelashes curved. What you hear counts. Chang Bubai coughed. Since the princess is in the palace, why haven't you appeared yet? You're like this. It's hard to avoid misunderstandings. Ji Xinyu raised her slender eyebrows. What does other people's misunderstandings have to do with me? It's fine as long as I have a clear conscience. This princess has indeed just returned, and they're not making excuses when they say I'm not in the palace. The South Sky Emperor gently asked his daughter, Xinyu, where did you go? Father has been sending people to look for you. You've also turned off the sound transmission talisman. Ji Xinyu said. In a few days, it will be Imperial Mother's birthday. This son wants to prepare a special gift for Imperial Mother. Coincidentally, the jasper snow lotus on the Snowfall Peak is blooming these 2 days, so this son went to pick it as a congratulatory gift from Imperial Mother. As she spoke, a faint light flashed on her fingertips, and a sparkling and translucent snow lotus appeared in her palm. A faint blue light danced in her palm, and a faint immortal luster lingered. Everyone present could be said to be experienced and knowledgeable, but at this moment, more than half of them were dumbfounded. These people were naturally knowledgeable. They recognized the fine snow lotus, and knew how difficult it was to pick this flower. Among the people present, there were many capable people. Many of them were famous experts in the Fanning continent, but not many of them dared to pick this flower from the mountain peak. But now, the flower was in the hands of this princess. Did she really pick it herself? Impossible. How could a little girl like her have such capabilities? Perhaps one of her senior brothers had given it to her to boost her reputation. That was what everyone thought at the same time. Rongyu Tianlan sat there, fanning himself without saying a word. He was probably the only one in the entire hall who knew that what Ji Xinyu said was true. Ever since Ji Xinyu appeared, she didn't even look at him, as if she didn't see him, or was she deliberately ignoring him? Did she already guess his identity at the immortal Cloud Mountain? Chapter 2666. She was actually able to keep her composure, and didn't reveal any clues at all. Rongyu Tianlan didn't make many mistakes. His fiancée was actually an anomaly. Rongyu Tianlan's eyes flashed with interest. He tapped the handle of his fan against his palm. Originally, he had planned to leave after explaining everything clearly. He wasn't afraid that the South Heaven Emperor would hold him back. Since he came back, he naturally had a way to force him to cancel the engagement. But now he didn't want to leave for the time being. He wanted to see how Princess Ji Xinyu would deal with this situation. Everyone was questioning the origin of this flower. No one believed that Ji Xinyu picked this flower herself. Even the South Heaven Emperor didn't believe it. In his eyes, his daughter definitely didn't have this ability. Among them, Chang Bubai was the one who questioned the loudest. He was just short of pointing at Ji Xinyu's nose and accusing her of lying. Ji Xinyu listened without saying a word. Only when the questioning voices gradually stopped did she turn to look at Chang Bubai. She didn't try to explain the origin of the flower. Instead, she said directly, "Let's put this flower aside for now. We still have a bet to complete. Let's fight first." Chang Bubai, are you sure you want to fight me? Ji Xinyu casually rolled up her sleeves and replied, "Nonsense." As she spoke, she slowly tied one of her arms to her waist. Chang Bubai was confused. What are you doing? Ji Xinyu glanced at him. Chang Bubai, a spell master in the Sanskrit continent. Rank 36th. Specializes in earth element attacks. Lee Fire Hook. This time, not only was Chang Bubai stunned, everyone else present was also stunned. Because what Ji Xinyu recited was Chang Bubai's resume. It could be said that it was exactly the same. How could a delicate princess know about this? Chang Bubai didn't know what to feel. So the princess knows me so well. Then you. Since she knew his reputation, she still dared to fight him? There were many experts in the Sanskrit continent. To be able to rank 36th was definitely an expert among experts. He was an awesome person who could tear down a palace with a wave of his hand. Ji Xinyue said indifferently, "Seeing that you are ranked 36th, you can barely fight me. However, you are not worth my 2 hands, 1 hand is enough." In the hall, there was the sound of a wine glass falling to the ground. Some people who were mentally weak were shocked by her big words. Chang Bubai's face was green and white. Ji Xinyue's words were like slaps to his face, insulting his character as an expert. He was so angry that he laughed. "Princess, are you tired of living? Or do you think that this young master has a tender heart for the fairer sex and can't bear to hit you?" Ji Xinyu raised an eyebrow. "Do you not understand human language? What's the point of talking so much? Whether it works or not, we'll see." This princess was really not a normal kind of straightforward. His words were direct and spicy enough. Compared to her incomparably beautiful appearance, they were 2 extremes. Rong Yuetian couldn't help but smile. He raised his hand, and a gambling table appeared in front of him. There were all kinds of chips on it. Everyone looked at him in confusion, not knowing what he was going to do. However, he flicked his sleeves. It's rare to encounter such a grand event. "Everyone, let's make a bet and see whose vision is more accurate." After he finished speaking, he placed his landscape fan and a blood coral jade pendant on his waist on the table. "I bet that the princess will win. Who wants to bet with me?" Chapter 2667. Everyone. Everyone couldn't understand what was going on in the 8th prince's head. This dispute had started because he had cancelled the engagement. Now that he had duped them into fighting, he was just a spectator, and he was still in the mood to gamble. The South Heaven's Arch also looked at Rongyue Tianlan with a complicated expression. He probably didn't expect him to do this, and even bet on his own daughter. What was the 8th Highness thinking? Could it be that he regretted seeing Xinyu's beauty? So he was using this to appease Xinyu? The South Heaven's Arch couldn't guess what the 8th prince was thinking, and the others couldn't either. However, everyone was still very interested in this bet, and placed their bets. Of course, everyone still favored Chang Bubai. After all, he was very famous in the Sanyin continent, and could do whatever he wanted. As for Ji Xinyu, she didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth, and was just boasting. The 8th prince might be thinking of compensating the beauty, but the others didn't think so. Most of them placed their bets on Chang Bubai. Only a few people were willing to take a gamble, and bet on Ji Xinyu, of course. In order to avoid losing everything, they placed a very small bet. Thus, on the gambling table, the bets on Ji Xinyu's side were very small, while the bets on Chang Bubai's side were piled up into a small mountain. The South Heaven's Arch felt that this was too unsightly, so he took out a few precious jewels and placed them on his daughter's side. Even though he didn't favor his daughter, he couldn't lose in front of others. At this point, Chang Bubai had no choice but to make a move. He said with a cold expression, "If I win, I also want a prize." "Speak." Ji Xinyu was already a bit impatient. Chang Bubai stared at her face. "If I win in 10 moves, you have to take off your veil." He had been curious about her appearance for a long time. This woman's eyes, skin, and figure were all very good. What if her nose and mouth were all crooked? Ji Xinyu didn't care and smiled. "Then you'll be at a disadvantage. How about this? I'll be more generous. If I can't win in 10 moves with 1 hand, I'll admit defeat. I'll accept any punishment." Chang Bubai. This princess's boasting was simply going to break the heavens. Even the current #1 expert of the Fanning continent wouldn't dare to say that. However, his reputation was extremely resounding. His large blade swept through the world, and was unrivaled. 10 years ago, Chang Bubai had suffered defeat at his hands. However, at that time, he had also endured more than 50 moves before being defeated. Chang Bubai coldly smiled and no longer spoke nonsense. He already wanted to teach this princess a lesson in blood. He wanted her to know that even if she was bragging, she still had to pay the price. After all, they were all cultivators. The banquet in the hall was quickly moved away, clearing out a large area. Everyone automatically stood outside the circle, waiting to watch the show. Chang Bubai still had the strength of a martial artist. He cupped his hands towards Ji Xinyu and said, "Please make the first move." Ji Xinyu stood there lazily, not intending to make the first move. "No need, you can do whatever you want." This kind of blatant disdain made Chang Bubai's heart burn with anger. Placing his palms together, he immediately made his move. Chapter 2668. The historical records of the Nantian clan later recorded this as follows. Chang Bubai, one of the 36 masters of the Brahma continent, fought with Princess Ji Xinyu at Langda Hall in the 18,000th year of the Brahma calendar. Ji Xinyu faced the enemy with one hand and defeated Chang Bubai in 5 moves. Chang Bubai lost one hand and one leg. The hall was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. Chang Bubai stood there with one leg, his head covered in sweat, and his face pale. He looked at Ji Xinyu in disbelief. Everyone else was also stunned, looking at Ji Xinyu as if she was a monster. Rongyu Tianlan was not surprised at all. He had seen Ji Xinyu's martial arts, and he could understand Chang Bubai's martial arts with just a glance. In the silence, he calmly put away his fan and jade pendant, then calmly distributed the things he had just won according to the amount of the bet. He slowly said, "I won." He then pulled out a large pile of spoils for the Nantian Arch. "Your Majesty, keep them well." Nantian Arch. The other people who had won felt like they were in a dream. They had been afraid that they had bet too much, but now they were regretting that they had bet too little. However, this was not the most important thing. The most important thing was that this princess had won. It turned out that this princess was not only as beautiful as a flower, but also had such profound martial arts. She was stronger than all the men present. Many people were so shocked that their mouths formed a circle. They rubbed their eyes again and again, almost unable to believe their eyes. Impossible! How could she have such profound martial arts? She must be cultivating some sorcery. I have never seen the moves she used just now. They are also not the martial arts of the Purple Cloud sect. Someone finally could not help but cry out. "It's not sorcery." Chang Bubai finally spoke slowly. He had fought with Ji Xinyu directly. Although he had never seen the martial arts she used, they did not have the slightest bit of sorcery. The bones in one of his hands and one of his legs were broken and twisted at strange angles. The pain of the broken bones penetrated his marrow. Chang Bubai's face was covered in cold sweat. Although his words were harsh, he was a man of his words. "I am willing to accept my loss. Princess is the true expert. I admire you." He might have been a little lenient when he made his first move, but after suffering a great loss, he began to go all out. Even after going all out, the result was still the same. What else could he say? With a plop, he knelt on the ground and kowtowed to Ji Xinyu 8 times. This was the bet, and he had to fulfill it. The stronger a person's martial arts was, the more they worshipped the strong, and Chang Bubai was no exception. He was now wholeheartedly convinced of Ji Xinyu's martial arts, and his kowtowing was not exaggerated at all. But to bark like a dog, he paused for a moment, his face turning red. Just as he was about to imitate her, Ji Xinyu waved her hand. "Killing someone is just a matter of nodding your head to the ground. A hero can be killed, but not humiliated. Seeing that you're a man, forget about imitating a dog." Chang Bubai's eyes lit up, his eyes filled with gratitude as he bowed deeply towards Ji Xinyu. "Many thanks, Princess." His attitude was respectful, and he no longer treated Ji Xinyu as a woman, but as a martial arts master, completely different from before. Ji Xinyu said indifferently, "No need to be so polite. In the future, don't look down on women, and don't follow what others say, to avoid being used as a tool by people with ulterior motives." Chang Bubai choked, and then bowed again. "I have learned from your teachings. I know my mistake. Princess's breadth of mind is no less than a man's. I admire you. In the future, if your highness has any errands, please tell me. This Chang will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire." Chapter 2669. Ji Xinyu nodded slightly and ignored him. She swept her gaze across the crowd and said, "Now, is there anyone else who doubts the origin of this flower? Who would doubt her now that she had shown this?" It was obvious that the flower had just been picked. It was clear that Princess Ji Shenyue had indeed just rushed back. She wasn't hiding in the palace in order to not break off the engagement like everyone had guessed. Such an outstanding appearance, such profound and exquisite martial arts. This woman was simply a legend. She had broken everyone's common understanding of women. Such an outstanding girl was actually rumored to be so unbearable. Indeed, rumors were the most untrustworthy. Those who had said all sorts of bad things about Ji Xinyu and looked down on her lowered their heads, not daring to say anything else. As for those unmarried young men, their gazes towards Ji Xinyu became complicated. Some admired, some adored, some envied, and some were eager to try. And the South Heaven Emperor was simply elated. This daughter had given him too much of a surprise and made him proud. He did not expect his daughter's martial arts to be so powerful. Even if she was not the #1 expert on the continent, she was at least #2, definitely first class. He thought that his daughter only liked to play with swords and sticks. Even if she was strong, it would only be a little better than flowery martial arts, so he did not take it to heart. He remembered that when his daughter had just returned from her studies, she was eager to get his approval and jumped in front of him, excitedly wanting to show him a swordsmanship. At that time, he happened to be annoyed by those rumors, so he scolded her right in her face. Then his daughter's bright eyes dimmed, and she slowly retreated. From then on, she did not mention anything about her martial arts. She left home for the first time in 500 years, and only stayed for 3 days before leaving. After all, she was once a princess who was doted on by her parents, so she still loved her family. In the few years after she finished her studies, she would still return home for a few days every year. But the South Heaven Emperor was also strange. After his daughter left home, he regretted it. But when he saw her, he was angry and could not help but scold her and give her the cold shoulder. Every time he saw her, he did not have a good expression. Empress Luxian followed her husband's footsteps. Although she did not scold her, she often advised her to act like a lady from a noble family and practice more needlework. As a result, the frequency of his daughter coming home became less and less. From 2 or 3 times a year to once a year, once every 5 years, once every 10 years. Especially after Ji Tianyue was born, the South Heaven Emperor doted on her even more than he did her in the past. Gradually, she only returned home once every 100 years. He actually knew very little about this daughter that he once loved the most. Naturally, he didn't know what level his daughter's martial arts had reached. It turned out that his daughter was so outstanding. His heart was filled with regret. But of course, he was overjoyed and proud at the moment. He swept away his previous gloominess and said with a face full of smiles, "Good daughter, it's rare for you to have such filial piety. Later, you can personally deliver it to your mother." His gaze turned to Rongyue Tianlan, who was standing at the side. This time he was much more confident. "Tianlan, this is Shenyu. You've seen her strength, haven't you? Then this marriage No matter how outstanding Ji Xinyu was, the South Heavenly Emperor still wanted this marriage to go through. Chapter 2670. After all, this was a matter that involved the 2 clans. In some matters, the Southern Sky Clan still had to rely on the Eastern Sky Clan's support. It could be said that their marriage was not just a matter between 2 children, but also involved their country and the world. Therefore, even if the Southern Sky Emperor was humble, he did not want to cancel this marriage. Moreover, Rongyu Tianlan was so outstanding. Such a son-in-law could not be found even with a string of night pearls, let alone with a lantern. The Southern Sky Emperor naturally did not want to give up. Originally, he felt that his daughter had a lot of problems and was not good enough to force Rongyu Tianlan to marry her. He also felt that he had let him down. Now, he felt that his back was firm, full of confidence. His daughter was so outstanding, she was worthy of this 8th highness, right? Could it be that he wanted to cancel the marriage after seeing such an outstanding fiancée? Rong Yu Tianlan's folding fan paused slightly. Before he could speak, Ji Xinyu spoke first. Let's forget about this marriage, I'll cancel it. Her voice was clear and crisp, like a pearl falling on a jade plate. It clearly rang throughout the hall, causing the hall that had just regained its liveliness to instantly quiet down. All eyes fell on Ji Xinyu. Shock, surprise, disbelief, suspicion, all kinds of gazes intersected. The Southern Sky Emperor was holding a cup of wine in his hand. At this moment the wine cup fell to the ground. Xinyu. Rong Yu Tianlan did not have much of a reaction. He held the folding fan and looked at her, casually tapping the fan handle in his palm. The smile on his lips did not change, but instead widened a little. He slowly said, Princess Xinyu also wants to cancel the marriage? Ji Xinyu's gaze finally turned to him. Her eyes were as clear as a lake, but she still looked at him as if she was looking at a cloud. This marriage is not consensual. Your Excellency and I are not the same kind of people. So there is no meaning in forcing ourselves to be tied together. When this marriage was first arranged, this princess was still young and could not resist. Although Your Excellency was already an adult at that time, you did not have much responsibility. Instead, you did not fight for it, and instead fled, causing this marriage to be delayed until now. Now it is time to cancel this wrong marriage. Her words were sharp enough, and straightforward enough, sonorous and powerful. It was transmitted to the ears of everyone present. Her voice was not loud, but it shook everyone's emotions. No one would have thought that this Princess Shen Yu would actually say such words in front of Rong Yu Tianlan. It was simply the most beautiful counterattack to his action of breaking off the engagement just now. Chang Bubai couldn't help but clap and give Ji Xinyu a thumbs up. Well said. While everyone cheered for Ji Xinyu in their hearts, they all looked towards Rong Yu Tianlan. He wanted to see how this proud son of heaven would react. Would he fly into a rage out of embarrassment? Rong Yu Tianlan looked at her with a pair of sparkling eyes. Not only did she not fly into a rage out of humiliation, the corners of her beautiful lips even curled up as she said generously, Princess is right. Previously, it was indeed Tianlan's fault. Tianlan apologizes to Princess here. She rolled up her sleeves and bowed to Ji Xinyu. Under his usually warm appearance, he was actually a sloppy, lazy, and casual person. However, his current appearance revealed a true seriousness, and the pair of eyes that looked at Ji Xinyu revealed a true apology and guilt. It was very obvious that his apology was very sincere, and was not just putting on an act. Ji Xinyu's personality was to be amenable to coaxing, but not coercion. If Rong Yu Tianlan used her status to suppress her at this time, or argued with her harshly, she would not be afraid. Chapter 2671. Ji Xinyu was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. If Rong Yu Tianlan were to use his status to suppress her or argue with her, she would not be afraid. At most, she would have a big fight with him. No matter who won or lost, it was not worth it. She had even prepared a lot of excuses to refute him in her heart. But he was sincerely apologizing, which made the anger that she had been suppressing dissipate by quite a bit. Since the other party was sincerely apologizing, she did not need to be unreasonable. So she coughed lightly and said, No need to be so polite. Maybe you had your difficulties back then. Forget it. Let's not bother about the past. The past was the past. Even if she pursued it, she could not get the past back. If it was 5 years ago, if she encountered today's incident, she might not have let it go so easily. She would definitely make Rong Yu Tianlan give her an explanation. But ever since she was saved by that mysterious person, it was as if she had an epiphany. Her thinking had risen by several levels. For example, right now, she was actually able to let go of things that would have been unforgivable in the past. The other party just bowed and she forgave him. She did not bother about it. Rong Yu Tianlan breathed a sigh of relief. Princess is indeed righteous. Tianlan admires you. Well said, well said. Ji Xinyu waved her hand. Rong Yu Tianlan looked at her and smiled again. Actually, Princess and I feel like old friends at first sight. What's even rarer is that we are of the same mind. Ji Xinyu raised her eyebrows and looked at him. Of the same mind? Rong Yu Tianlan smiled like a spring breeze. Yes, I have the intention to cancel the engagement. Princess also has the intention to cancel the engagement. Aren't we of the same mind? Originally, everyone looked at them, as if they were smiling at each other, and sympathized with each other. They thought that they regretted not knowing each other earlier, and that they would not mention the matter of breaking off the engagement again. However, they did not expect Rongyue Tianlan to bring it up again. It seemed that even the outstanding Ji Shun, you could not really move the heart of the eighth prince. This engagement was definitely cancelled. Everyone's bright eyes looked at Ji Shunyu again. Some people who had many thoughts and liked to make guesses about people even thought that Ji Shun Yu was just playing hard to get. But now that trick had failed, Ji Shunyu smiled as well. Her smile was bright, and her eyelashes curved like crescent moons. Like a brother, she patted Rongyue Tianlan's shoulder and said, "Not bad. In this regard, we are of the same mind. Let's have a toast." After all, she was used to disguising herself as a man in the pugilistic world. And she had also made some friends in the pugilistic world. Some of her actions had become deep-rooted habits. Now that she had gotten rid of this big trouble, she was actually quite happy in her heart. She had accidentally revealed her usual behavior. After this slap, she saw Rongyue Tianlan's slightly playful eyes and everyone's shocked expression, as if they had been struck by lightning. Only then did she realize what she had done. She coughed and retracted her hand, regaining her princess-like demeanor. "Right. Since we've all agreed to cancel the engagement, let's act as soon as possible. Tomorrow, we'll head to the Sanskrit totem marriage pillar to settle this matter." Rongyue Tian was speechless. She didn't expect her to be more impatient than herself. Could it be that she already had someone she liked? Was it really what she wanted when she came to cancel the engagement? This way, the guilt in his heart would be much less. Rongyue Tianlan felt that she should be relieved. Chapter 2672. Rongyue Tianlan felt that he should heave a sigh of relief, but seeing how anxious Ji Shunyu was, he suddenly felt a little upset. Of course, this uncomfortable feeling only flashed past his heart. Even he did not notice it. He raised his head and was about to answer her when he suddenly saw her face. He took a step forward and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Ji Shunyu did not know when, but her face was as beautiful as a flower that had just bloomed. Logically speaking, she should have felt her cheeks burning, but she did not feel anything at all. When Rongyue Tianlan took a step forward, she took a step back and said, "What do you mean?" Before she could finish her sentence, her vision suddenly turned black, and she fell forward involuntarily. Rongyue Tianlan was already prepared, and raised his arms to catch her. There was a faint fragrance of cold plum on his body. Ji Shunyu fell into his arms. She was originally dizzy and could not find her way, but when she suddenly smelled the fragrance on his body, her body stiffened slightly. She suddenly felt an inexplicable repulsion in her heart. She forced herself to raise her hand to push him away and said, "You, let go of me. Men and women should not touch each other." She did not have much strength in her hands now, so pushing him was no different from pushing a kitten. Rongyue Tianlan simply carried her up and said indifferently, "Although you and I want to break off the engagement, it is not done yet. Since it is not done, I am now your fiancé, so what's wrong with hugging? The rule of men and women not touching each other does not apply to you and me." Ji Shunyu had never been hugged like this since she became an adult. In other words, other than when she was a child, she had never been hugged by anyone else. At this moment, lying in Rongyue Tianlan's arms, she was very uncomfortable. She wanted to push him away, but her vision turned black and her hands and feet were weak, unable to exert any strength. She was shocked and asked, "You, what did you do to me?" Rongyue Tianlan looked down at her and asked, "What can I do to you? Then why did I?" "You were poisoned." Rongyue Tianlan's voice was cold. "The fire dragon's poison should have been caused when you were picking herbs." Ji Shunyu was still half convinced. I was only scratched by its claws a few times. Shouldn't the fire dragon's poison be in its mouth? She heard that one would only be poisoned after being bitten by the fire dragon. So when she was fighting with the fire dragon, she had been guarding its mouth. "Rongyue Tianlan, He didn't say anything else as he carried her out in large strides. At the same time, he asked the dumbfounded South Heaven Emperor, "Report the location of her palace." The South Heaven Tharch did not react for a moment. "Ah, her bedchamber. She's not in the palace all year round, so we didn't prepare anything for her." Rong Yuetian abruptly turned her head. "Nantian Palace is so big, yet it doesn't even have a place for her." It was rare to see such a stern expression on his face, but it actually made everyone's heart quiver. Rong Yuetianlan only had one purpose in coming to the Fanning continent, and that was to break off the engagement. Therefore, he had always kept a low profile and restrained his sharpness. He had always appeared gentle and elegant, like a harmless noble young master. At this moment he was enraged, and he no longer suppressed his aura as an exalted immortal. The immortal cultivation world had always been like this. High-level cultivators had a natural kind of pressure. Even if they didn't speak, they could still make low-level cultivators tremble in fear. What's more, Rong Yuetian had the aura of an absolute superior. Even if he didn't flare up, no one would dare to act rashly in front of him. Chapter 2673. At this moment in his anger, his aura was fully released, causing the temperature of the entire hall to drop by 10 degrees. The South Sky Emperor was also in a high position for a long time, but under the pressure of his aura, he couldn't even raise his head. Being questioned by him, he panicked. Every time she comes back she sleeps with the Empress. Before Ji Shenyue was 500 years old, she had her own palace. Later on, she was sent away to learn martial arts, and after 500 years, Ji Shenluo took a fancy to her palace. He cried and acted spoiled, insisting on staying in that palace. The South Sky Emperor's heart softened, and he agreed, letting Ji Shenluo happily move in. According to the South Sky Emperor's thoughts, when Ji Shenyu finished her studies, he would return it to her. But he didn't expect that after 500 years, although Ji Shenyu became more cheerful, her temperament became more eccentric. When she saw that her palace was occupied by someone else, she was angry. She immediately forced Ji Shenluo to move out. At that time, Ji Shenluo didn't want to move out, crying and saying that he had grown attached to the palace. He begged father to arrange another palace for Ji Shenyu. The South Sky Emperor had a headache from his eldest daughter's quarrel, so he ordered another palace for Ji Shenyu. Unexpectedly, after Ji Shenyu heard his order, she looked at him in disbelief for a long time. The South Sky Emperor's hair stood on end. Before he could say anything, Ji Shenyu sneered and left. After a few years, when she came back, she would live in the Empress Palace. Usually, she would stay for 2 or 3 days, and she didn't need the South Sky Emperor to prepare another palace for her. After Ji Shenluo got married, the palace was empty again. When Ji Shenyu came back, the South Sky Emperor told her that she could live in her own palace. But he didn't expect Ji Shenyu to just spit out 2 words. "It's dirty." She refused to step into the palace again. The South Sky Emperor felt that this daughter was too difficult to serve, and was a bit angry. So he didn't care about her anymore. So it was delayed until now. Now, Ji Shenyu didn't even have her own palace. In the entire Brahma continent, there was no princess who didn't have her own palace. Even if it was a small vassal state, the princess's rooms would still be magnificent and incomparably noble. Rong Yuishenlin looked at the woman in her arms, and her heart sank slightly. How did she, the princess of a country, end up like this? Rong Yuishenlin thought of the rumors about her that were circulating in various countries, and her heart felt like it was weighed down by a weight. This marriage had brought her more disaster than he had imagined. The South Sky Emperor also realized that this was too unreasonable and hurriedly said, "She actually has a palace, but because she isn't in the palace often, her little sister is living there now. You can let her little sister move out first." Rong Yuetian glanced at him. That gaze was as cold as ice, causing the South Heaven Emperor's heart to tremble again. Rong Yuishenlin's cold voice sounded, "No need. Let's prepare a quiet room first. The poison in her body must be removed immediately." He carried her and strode out. The people in the hall looked at each other. Everyone was confused. They didn't know what was going on. His Highness the 8th Prince had clearly come to cancel the engagement, but his concern for this girl was not ordinary. The efficiency of the South Sky Emperor's subordinates was quite high, and they quickly prepared a quiet room. Those maids and attendants were preparing to clean up, and Rongyue Shenlin walked in with the princess in his arms. His aura was too strong, and he was too handsome. At this moment, he was carrying their princess. This made those maids stare at him, and they were so nervous that they didn't know where to put their hands and feet. Chapter 2674. Get out! Rongyue Tianlan's voice was cold. The South Sky Emperor who followed behind quickly said, "This quiet room hasn't been cleaned for a few days. Let them clean it up. Don't worry, they are quick very soon." He shut his mouth before he could finish his words, because this 8th Highness just waved his sleeves, and after a faint blue light flashed, the entire room seemed to have been cleaned by water. Not a speck of dust was left. Rongyue Tianlan didn't stop walking, and put her on the bed in the quiet room. Usually, when a girl was poisoned, her body was weak, and she was carried by a man. Under normal circumstances, she would faint, and when she woke up, she would find that the wounds on her body had been treated. That would be more dramatic, and not too embarrassing. However, Ji Xinyu's nerves had always been very strong. She was clearly very dizzy, her vision was very blurry, and her body was very weak. But her mind couldn't be any clearer. She clearly felt that Rongyue Tianlan had been carrying her, and even if she didn't want to, she couldn't break free. His embrace was very warm, and the faintly discernible fragrance on his body had been dense at the tip of her nose, making her irritable for no reason. She even suspected that the fragrance on his body actually had a refreshing effect. She had been disguised as a man for many years. Although she was open-minded and often drank and ate meat with men, and went on adventures to fight monsters, she understood that she was a girl, and she still paid attention to the distance between her and those people, trying to minimize physical contact as much as possible. At most, she would pat on the shoulder or the back. But now, she was being carried in a man's arms. This feeling of her body floating in the air and completely handing her weight to another person was very uncomfortable, and she felt very insecure. It made her body stiff from the beginning to the end. Until Rongyue Tianlan put her on the bed, she secretly sighed in relief. Her body moved, and she wanted to sit up subconsciously. A hand was placed on her shoulder, and Rongyue Tianlan leaned over to look at her. "Don't move." Ji Xinyu looked at him warily, her eyes wide open. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her appearance, and his mind was slightly shaken. He vaguely felt that he had seen her like this before, but he couldn't remember where. She looked like a little girl now. Rongyue Tianlan softened his voice. "Don't be afraid, I will cure you." Only then did the South Sky Emperor interrupt. "I have already called the Imperial Doctor. He will be here in a cup of tea's time." "No need. The fire dragon poison cannot be treated by ordinary Imperial physicians. You go out and send someone to guard this place. Before I leave, don't let anyone enter this place." Rongyue Tianlan ordered. The South Heaven Arch was stunned. 8th Highness is proficient in medicine. "I remember that you didn't understand this 3,000 years ago. Just because I didn't understand it 3,000 years ago, doesn't mean I won't understand it 3,000 years later. If you continue to nag and delay the treatment of her, I'm afraid that her skills will be completely crippled before she can serve you." Rong Juishan's voice turned cold. At this point, the South Sky Emperor couldn't say anything else. He looked at the two people lying on the bed and suddenly had an idea. "All right, then I'll have to trouble your Highness 8th Prince to take care of my daughter. I'll go arrange it now." He turned around and strode out. Only the two of them were left in the large quiet room. Ji Xinyu's hair stood on end. It wasn't that she had never been alone with a man before, but that was only when her skills were extremely high, and she could protect herself. Now, although her mind was clear now, she was still conscious. Chapter 2675. Although she was conscious now, her body was extremely weak. All her skills seemed to have disappeared. and her hands and feet were as limp as mud. Rongyue Tianlan was sitting right beside her, which made her extremely nervous. Rongyue Tianlan looked down at her, who was like a little hedgehog, and the corners of his lips curled up slightly. Afraid of me? Ji Xinyu pursed her lips, her eyes full of caution. Rongyue Tianlan sighed. Your vigilance is unreasonable. I came here this time to break off the engagement with you. If I wanted to do anything to you, why would I break off the engagement? He touched her forehead with one hand and said seriously, So, don't think too much. I just want to treat your illness. These words were obviously comforting, but it was also a little hurtful. Ji Xinyu did not buy it. I can actually treat this injury myself. You don't have to worry about it. Huh. Rongyue Tianlan raised his eyebrows and withdrew his hand. Really? Of course. I often treat my own injuries. I'm very skilled. Ji Xinyu replied proudly. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her proud little face and nodded. If that's the case, very good. Then get up and try to treat the scratch on your calf. He stepped back and looked at her with his arms crossed, as if he was going to watch from the sidelines. She could treat it herself. She was an expert at it. Because Ji Xinyu often practiced martial arts, it was inevitable that she would often get injured. She was the only female disciple in her sect, so when she got injured, she learned to treat it herself, and would not ask others to do it. After completing her apprenticeship, she walked the Jianghu and suffered countless injuries. Naturally, it was not convenient for her to ask others to treat it for her, so she did it herself. Over time, she had become an expert at bandaging wounds. She could even bend her arm and treat the wounds on her back herself. Her independence was not ordinary. Now, she only suffered a claw wound on her calf, thigh, stomach, and collarbone. The wound was only scratched by the tip of the claw. It was not more than half an inch deep. She also sealed her acupoints in time to stop the bleeding, so this injury was nothing to her. As for the weakness in her body, it was probably because she used too much energy fighting the fire dragon, and used the blink technique to rush. She would be fine as long as she had a good rest. She was well aware of her own injuries. They were not as serious as what Rongyue Tianlan had said. She took a light breath, and slowly sat up by the side of the bed. Her body was too weak. Just this movement made her sweat profusely, and the wounds on her body, that were no longer painful, began to burn. She endured the pain, and leaned her back against the railing of the bed. Her fingers touched her trousers, and she looked at Rongyue Tianlan, who was not far away. He was looking at her with bright eyes. Can you go out? She had some injuries on her body that were not suitable for men to see. No, Rongyue Tian answered straightforwardly. Ji Xinyu. Why? I'm afraid that after I go out, you'll faint from fright, and I won't be able to save you in time. Rongyue Tianlan simply found a chair and sat down. With a swoosh, she opened her folding fan and shook it twice. Ji Xinyu. Faint from fright? Did he think that she was a delicate young mistress? What kind of wounds had she not seen in her life? She had even seen disemboweled people. Ji Xinyu was too lazy to argue with him. She raised her hand and pulled up her trousers. She decided to treat the wound on her calf first, and let him see that she could handle it well on her own. She pulled up the loose trousers neatly, and then she stared. Chapter 2676. Her calf was hit by the fire dragon's claw, leaving a half-foot long and half-inch deep wound. But now, the wound had disappeared, and was replaced by a layer of red scales that covered the surface of her wound. She instantly had goosebumps all over her body. Although she was brave, she had trypophobia. At this moment, when she saw the dense scales, her scalp exploded, and her originally morbidly bright red face turned snow-white in an instant. She was already very weak, and she forced herself to sit there, but after being frightened, her vision turned black, and she leaned back. Behind her was the hard headboard, and if she leaned back like this, the back of her head would definitely make a sound, and she might even faint. The moment she leaned back, she was mentally prepared for the pain at the back of her head, but she didn't expect that she didn't feel any pain, even when she was lying on the ground. The ground was not hard, and it was very soft, with a faint plum fragrance. A faint voice sounded in her ear. Fortunately, I have foresight. Ji Xinyue raised her head stiffly and met Rongyu Ishinlin's sparkling eyes. This person was still sitting on the chair just now, but in the blink of an eye, he teleported to the front of her bed and caught her with one arm, and she was lying in the crook of his arm at the moment. Ji Xinyue didn't even see his afterimage when he teleported. This skill. Rongyu Ishinlin placed her safely on the pillow and asked her slowly, "Are you frightened?" More than frightened, she was almost scared to death. Although Ji Xinyue was always calm, her voice trembled at this moment. How did I grow scales? On the other wounds. She tried to feel it, but she only felt an itch, exactly the same as the feeling on her leg. If her whole body was covered with such disgusting scales, Ji Xinyue's forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Rongyu Ishinlin looked at her and didn't have the heart to hurt her, but he still told her the truth. The wounds are the same. The scales on the other wounds are only more, not less. This time, not only was there cold sweat on Ji Xinyue's forehead, her whole body was sweating, and her face was even paler. How did I get these scales? Rongyu Ishinlin said indifferently. That fire dragon's teeth are indeed the most poisonous, but its claws also have a kind of poison. When you were scratched by it, if you applied the antidote in time and meditated for an hour, you would be able to get rid of the poison completely. But you wanted to be brave and immediately used the 1,000 miles in a breath technique after being injured. So the poison went directly into your skin, and the scales grew. This person was very experienced and knowledgeable. He actually saw that she used the 1,000 miles in a breath technique. It seemed that not only was his martial arts abnormal, but also his eyesight was also abnormal. How do you treat this wound? Can the scales be removed? Ji Xinyue stared at him anxiously. From his tone, he should be able to the wound. He should be able? The scales should also be removed, right? Rongyu Ishinlin sighed. It's a little difficult. Ji Xinyue's heart sank. She raised her eyes to look at him. What do you mean? You mean you can't treat it either? Then what you said to my father just now. It's easy to save your life and even preserve your martial arts, but it's quite difficult to completely remove these scales. Rongyu Ishinlin interrupted her to explain. She had to carry these scales for the rest of her life? Perhaps it was because of that special environment. But Ji Xinyue had actually given up on herself deep down and didn't care much about her body. Chapter 2677. When she was injured, she only needed to bandage it so that it wouldn't bleed or fester. As long as it healed, it would be over. Therefore, there were many scars on her body, which were not as smooth and delicate as her little face. Now adding a few scales to those scars was nothing. At most, people would gossip about her being a monster, which was not worth much. The only thing that she couldn't stand was the numbness in her scalp when she looked at these scales. Maybe it would be fine after she got used to it. Anyway, it was hidden in her clothes, and only she could see it in the future. She would just look at it less. Therefore, when she heard Rongyu Tianlan's words, she heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that I can keep my martial arts. With martial arts, she could protect herself. Rongyu Tianlan choked. He looked at her and asked, You don't care about these scales? Didn't all girls like to be beautiful? If there was a cut on her body, it would be like the sky was falling. Why did Ji Xinyue was calm and collected? I care. But it can't be helped if it's not easy to remove, right? Leaving these scales. It's just a little ugly. Anyway, no one will see it. I won't look at these places in the future. Rongyu Tianlan was speechless. He chuckled. How can no one see it? In the future, won't your husband be able to? He paused. If he continued, it would seem frivolous. Moreover, he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Ji Xinyue closed her eyes. Worry about it tomorrow. That husband might still be in my mother's belly. What's the point of being so calculative now? She had already made up her mind. After breaking off this engagement, she would be truly free. In the future, she would walk freely in the Jianghu without any intention of marrying. Anyway, she wouldn't go home easily. Her parents couldn't force her to marry, even if they wanted to. Living alone was actually quite good. She could eat her fill and the whole family wouldn't be hungry. She didn't have to worry about this and that. She felt that this idea was quite good, and intended to carry it out to the end. However, she didn't intend to share this idea with Rongyue Tianlan. Otherwise, he might think that she didn't want to marry in the future because she was hurt by him. She wanted to be a chaste woman for him for the rest of her life. Therefore, she casually said this. Her tone was unusually free and easy. Rongyue Tianlan looked at her in different look, and did not know why there was anger in his heart. He did not say anything, but suddenly raised his hand and rolled up half of her trousers. His movements were so fast that Ji Xinyu felt a chill on her leg and jumped in fright. She subconsciously retracted her leg. "What are you doing?" Rong Yuetian's gaze fell on half of her leg, and the smile on her lips turned cold. Her skin was actually very good, white and tender. Her legs were also very good-looking, straight and slender. However, on this leg, there were countless scars of various sizes. There were scratch marks, tear marks, sword marks, and even bite marks from wild beasts. Some of these scars were deep, some were shallow. Some were deep, some were old, some were newly added. Layer upon layer, the large scars crushed the small scars. It was a ghastly sight. Rongyue Tianlan had treated at least 8,000 patients in her life, if not 10,000. But this was the first time she saw a girl with so many scars on her body. And this girl was his fiancée. "What happened to these scars on your body?" As he spoke, he rolled up the other leg of her trousers, and even rolled up her sleeves. Ji Xinyu wanted to resist, but she didn't have the strength. She could only watch as her limbs were exposed. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.